Welcome to the MPW Digital Preview Show, presented by Walk-On's Sports Bistreaux. I'm Neal McCready. I'll be with you for the next 3+ hours or so. A lot of guests coming up as we preview a big weekend of college football, some NFL as well. At the end of the show, number 12, Ole Miss heads to Tuscaloosa Saturday for a nationally televised showdown with defending national champion and top-ranked Alabama inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. The Rebels are 3-0 on the season after a blowout win over Tulane 2 weeks ago in Oxford. Alabama's 4-0 on the campaign, having defeated Miami and Atlanta, beaten Mercer in Tuscaloosa, held off Florida in Gainesville, and then routed Southern Miss this past Saturday in T-Town. Today on the show, we'll break down X's and O's with MPW Digital's resident football expert, Pete DeWeese. We'll get the Alabama perspective and more from the next round's Ryan Brown. Jeffrey Wright of 92.9 ESPN in Memphis will join to discuss the Rebels and the Tide and also go around the Southeastern Conference. And then Barstool Sports Ben Mintz will look at both the college and NFL weekend schedule from a betting perspective and more. We'll also take you on an abbreviated double-decker bus tour as Nadia Thornton from Visit Oxford highlights some of the key sites on the hour-long tour. But first, a word about Walk-Ons. Walk-On Sports Bistreaux puts everything they've got into bringing you game day with the taste of Louisiana. Dig into their mouth-watering Louisiana cuisine like po' boys, gumbo, and voodoo shrimp, plus fan favorites like juicy burgers and fresh salads. Quality, fresh ingredients you can't help but crave. Coming soon in November, Walk-On Sports Bistreaux, more than a restaurant, 1737B University Avenue in Oxford. Walk-On Sports Bistreaux creates an environment that fosters growth and belonging for all, where the team is bigger than the individual, where they exceed expectations and positively impact every community they serve. Think you have what it takes to bring people together and provide a memorable game day experience? Visit 720 Highland Colony Parkway in Ridgeland to join their team today. Walk-On's Bistreaux, more than a restaurant. So we opened up every week in this spot with our visit with Pete DeWeese. He gets a lot of X's and O's, some film review from last year's Ole Miss-Alabama game in Oxford as the two teams get ready to meet in Tuscaloosa. So here's Pete. This has fast become maybe the most popular thing that we do at MPW Digital, rebelgrove.com, whatever you want to label us. It is our weekly visit with Pete DeWeese. We didn't do one last week because Ole Miss didn't play. I had people going, "We just get him on anyway, damn it." And I was like, well, they don't play until the next, and we call it the pregame show, and there is no game to pregame. But here we are. It's Ole Miss. It's Alabama. Pete, thanks for joining us. I know people are probably, to put it mildly, anxious to hear your thoughts on this game. So thanks for spending some time.
Glad to be here. This is going to be a good game on Saturday. So I had fun kind of diving into it and working on this a little bit.
We're going to spend no time on Ole Miss Tulane. It happened. You saw it. If you still need to talk about Tulane, there are therapists out there that you can reach out to. They do professional work, and I wish you the best. We're going to dive into Alabama. Ole Miss, 12th ranked in the country. Alabama, the top-ranked team in the country, the defending national champs. 2:30 CBS. Everybody knows the deal by now. I'll start here, and then we're going to get into. I know you've got some charts and graphs and film, and God only knows what else. But I'll start here. Is this a winnable game for Ole Miss? Not the betting line. Is this a winnable football game?
I think it is. I don't think they're going to walk in there and it's an automatic thing for sure. Ole Miss, they have so many weapons offensively. They're playing good defense right now, and they have a head coach that's not afraid to take risk. And I think that's important when playing Nick Saban. I think you have to be willing to take risk. And I think that's an important factor. And then I think you put into it, the coordinators they have and on both sides of the ball. And that's not just Lebby, but I think they're guys with good plans. And so the question just becomes, is this a year where the talent can match up with what Alabama is going to bring to the table?
All right. I know you're going to get into some things. If there's a key or two, we talked to Tyler Siskey earlier, and he was like, hey, I'm watching the coin toss. I'm watching how Alabama defends right off the very get-go. I'm watching a couple of things. Are there a couple of really early cues that you're looking for as to how this game's going to go?
Yeah, I think I think he's right about saying how Alabama defends. I think also how Ole Miss defends and how Alabama attacks. You know, from a when Ole Miss has the ball, it's going to be interesting to see. And I think I read one of the, something you wrote earlier this week that talked about the same thing. Is we saw in the first few games teams trying to take the Arkansas approach from last year, right? Keep everything underneath, force them to beat you with short stuff. And we saw a disciplined Corral dealing the ball, taking what was there. And then all of a sudden Tulane got desperate. And as soon as they got desperate, they lit the match and Corral dumped gasoline on it, right? So with Alabama, the talent's different. What Nick Saban does defensively, call it Pete Golding all you want to, and there's no question that he's brought some things and he plays a major role in what happens, right? But the Nick Saban defense, there are a lot of things from the college game that go up to the NFL. It's you would be shocked at how much actually starts at the high school level and goes up. There's not nearly as much that starts on the NFL level and goes down. And there's only a few guys in the NFL that I would say truly do things that matriculate down, right? And so, but Saban is the guy that not just throughout college football, but Saban is the guy whose scheme goes up, right? And it started with he and Bill Belichick when the whole NFL was playing cover three and they were certain weaknesses to the coverage and they created their Rip Liz match together when they were in Cleveland. And then Nick, leaves and takes it to Michigan State. And that coverage concept is the basic principle of that defense. And so it's been adapted since then. And he's added things. And when he can play cover one and mix in his Rip Liz and then get to some of his Cora, which is his cover two stuff, he can really do so many different things. So I'm really curious to see how aggressive do they choose to be. And to me, that's going to be less about their feelings on the quarterback. It's going to be more about what do they really think of the Ole Miss offensive line and then the matchup perimeter, right? The one thing that I'll say is, there's been a lot of turnover on the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of new young bodies, guys that played in backup roles last year. But when you look at the skill positions, when I'm watching the game, preparing for this, outside of Yeboah and Elijah Moore, it's the same guys that proved they could be successful to some degree last year against Alabama. So Ole Miss is, in some ways, has to feel good about that. But at the same time, Alabama's not rolling anybody out there that they don't think has a chance to go compete. So
everybody's a big time player. The one thing that I've talked to a couple of people, and then I'm gonna hand after this, I'm gonna hand the floor to you and let you sort of roll with it however you want to. I've talked to a couple of people in football, coaching type people over the course of the last week, as I just always do this, like, hey, I don't want to completely sound like a total idiot. I mean, I know I'm gonna sound like an idiot, but I don't want to sound like a total idiot. And am I right in this and that? And a couple of different coaches independently of one another said, look, at the end of the year, Alabama's defense is going to be really good. But right now, you see some growing pains. And here's why. A year ago, even Alabama, even the King, had to be so COVID aware that you got into practice, you got your work done, and you got out. You got everybody separated. Yeah, you wanted to meet, but meetings were by Zoom. Men don't do as well in Zoom as they do in person. Ask me how I know. And there was all sorts of stuff like that. It was like, so guys that were 2s and 3s a year ago, yeah, they're super talented. Otherwise, they wouldn't sign with Alabama. But they didn't get the reps that they may have gotten in a normal year. And that maybe you see a little of that right now. Some guys that have some growing pains. You know this. When you break guys in, even in varsity, right? A sophomore comes up, you're like, oh, this kid's going to be really good. But he's got to adjust, and he's got to get used to some things, and he's got to get used to learning, and he's got to get used to every play, and he's got to get used to bouncing back from a setback or a quick transition or whatever. Well, they're still young people. Even though they're great athletes at Alabama, they're still young people, and there might be a little bit of a growing pain that normally a Nick Saban program wouldn't have.
I think the big thing about that, and particularly when you talk about the defensive side of the ball, the vocabulary, the terminology of the Saban defense, Sabanese, as people call it, is as wide of a language. It's the breadth of that language is so vast, a lot more so in a lot of ways than a lot of other programs, right? And so when you talk about plugging in kids that are suddenly having to react to things in a fast manner, and it's things that they haven't game planned for, and they're getting different looks, and they're having to communicate all these things. And I know every week I'm on here talking about communication, but again, when coaches talk about eyes and eye discipline and communicating, like particularly on the defensive side of the ball, you cannot undervalue the importance of those things, right? So not just with those guys, but I think the transfer portal in some ways adds another layer to that. I'm watching the Florida game, and there were a couple times where number 10 linebacker transfer from Tennessee, really good football player. Yeah. He's a high level future NFL linebacker, right? There are times where shifts and motions and things start to happen, and you can tell he's not confident in the check. Everybody else is playing one thing, and he's either getting to it late or playing something else. And it's not a ton.
Florida's going fast.
And so Florida's going fast. And listen, I am not a Dan Mullen fan, but Dan Mullen designs an offense and designs a game plan as well as anybody in college football. And he makes it very quarterback friendly and puts a lot of stress on the defense with some of the things that he does. And so, I'm watching that and I'm looking at number 10 and I'm going, man, this kid's, he does some really elite things as an athlete, as a player, when he's fitting things and he knows what he's doing. There's a couple times where Florida took advantage of the fact that he was lost. Right. And so I think when you talk about that piece coming out, and that's interesting, talking about COVID and Zoom and what that looked like for those guys. Right. And now you lose talent and you're replacing them with guys who haven't maybe had the same number of reps, haven't had the same in-house experience to learn. And now you're asking them to speak that language, there's a reason, I think, at Alabama, and I may be wrong here, and because I'm not a Tide guy, I don't follow them per se. But outside of truly elite freshmen, you don't see a ton of freshmen playing, particularly in their secondary or even at linebacker. And when you do, they're surrounded by veterans that can make them right. You'll see the freshmen play on the D line. You'll see the freshmen put in to go rush the passer, but there's so much that has to happen from a communication standpoint that you can find some mistakes there. So, and that's one of the things that I think Kiffin and Levy probably do best is they continue to find ways to stress defenses and get people in those situations where you may have a kid bust all of a sudden. So that's what Ole Miss is going to be looking to do a lot, I think, on Saturday.
The floor is yours.
All right. So, I kind of figure let's look at a couple different things. And I want to start off talking about, when Ole Miss is on defense. As far as I'm concerned, Ole Miss is playing good defense. Questions I have to answer. You go back to the Austin Peay game. Alabama clearly has guys out there that are going to be able to stress the edge. You look at Mechie and some of the things that he does. And the kid, obviously, he's got a chance to go be explosive. So how can Ole Miss match up with that? There's been a lot of question with Ole Miss switching defensive schemes. How are they going to match personnel? How are they going to match gaps when suddenly there's 2 tight ends in the game as opposed to 4 receivers and no tight end? And then I think the other thing, anytime you're playing a team like Alabama, is what's your depth like in the front, right? Whether it's the D-line, the linebackers, and even those safeties that are going to be asked to play in the box. As the game gets long, and if Alabama starts really trying to lean on you, what does your depth look like there to get you off the field in certain situations? So those are the things I think, from an Ole Miss defensive perspective that we're going to have to see answered, right, for them to be successful. As far as the Alabama offense goes, they're not what they were a year ago. And that's not to say that they're not a good offense right now, but they're not the same that they were the last 2 seasons per se. And a lot of that is because of the talent that they've lost. I mean, whether it was Najee Harris or the quarterbacks or the run of receivers, I mean, just in the offensive
line and Smith
and Godly, right? And And look, they're always going to experience. But the other thing is you lose all but one of your offensive coaches, right? Your wide receiver coach is back. I think he's in his third season. The rest of the offensive staff, if I'm not mistaken, is entirely new. So, Bill O'Brien comes down, and Bill O'Brien had success as a college football coach before going to the NFL. But, this is where you see Saban's relationship with Belichick, because was with Belichick for a while in the NFL, and he comes down. He brings Doug Marrone in as the offensive line coach. I don't know if Doug Marrone's been an offensive line coach since 2005 in the NFL, right? And after that, he was always a coordinator or a head coach. And so they bring a different style of play. There's a lot of NFL influence in what they do. Some of the staples of what they've done since, it's kind of been the thing, right? When Nick hired Lane, he brought him in to take the things that they had been doing for a long time and to take them to the next level, to diversify it a little bit, add tempo elements and do some different things, try to make them a little bit more explosive without losing the edge that they have from a physical standpoint. So when Lane moved on, the kind of thing has been the language here stays the same. So whoever comes in, you adapt to the system, you add the spice that you need to add, but the system is the system and it doesn't change. That's probably still the same way, but to some degree, I watch what they're doing now, and I feel like there has been more change away from what they've done the past couple of years.
Because Sarkisian, from Kiffin to Sarkisian is not as big of a jump as Sarkisian to O'Brien.
Not when
Lane and Sark are pretty similar in terms of the way they see the game.
They're very similar. I mean, they grew in the game together, right? Both of them are probably still using some terminology and concepts that they used at USC.
A lot of Pete Carroll influence there.
A ton of Pete Carroll influence, right?
Yeah.
And so where Bill O'Brien, it looks a little bit differently. So I think, just players aside, the new staff, you bring Robert Gillespie, who's from Hattiesburg, played at Florida, most recently was at North Carolina. You bring him in to coach running backs, right? Tight end coach coming over from somewhere in Texas, I believe, coaching tight ends, running special teams. Like, all of a sudden, you've turned over all these bodies that are leading that offensive style.
But correct me if I'm wrong here. Let me interrupt, because a lot of those guys, like Gillespie, is brought in primarily to be a recruiter, right? So he's just kind of doing what O'Brien tells him to do, but yet there's still a learning curve for him as well.
So, Gillespie's he's a really good football coach. He is a really good recruiter as well. I've been around him enough to believe that. But you're right. He's brought in to recruit. He's brought in to make sure they get their guys. And look, they're going to use Bill O'Brien and Marrone and those guys. They're going to use their names is in their NFL pedigree, right? Is a recruiting tool too. But when you bring in Gillespie, you need him to be an absolute ace. But going from Phil Longo's offense at North Carolina the last couple of years into this Bill O'Brien system is a whole nother ball game. Now, Gillespie's smart enough to handle it. It's not a question of can he learn the offense, right? But
it can take a minute.
But it's a different world for sure.
Okay.
So, the big thing with Alabama is I think personnel dictates game plan, which is a very NFL mindset. So for Ole Miss, understanding who's on the field, how it affects what Alabama likes to do, is going to be big. So to kind of focus on that, right? I think the big thing, there's a million things you can talk about, but I think one of the big things from a coaching standpoint that you have to recognize, and there's going to be spotters in the box that are communicating this as soon as the change happens. They're going to be, what the personnel grouping is, who's in at tight end, because who's in at tight end matters when you watch this Alabama offense. When number 85, Kendall Randolph, is in the game, he is a glorified offensive lineman. He is listed on the official roster as number 85 / number 60. He's 6'4", 298 pounds, probably a guard when he's not playing tight end. but even the way the cleats he has on and the way his shoes are taped and spatted, he's a lineman, and that's what he's in there to do, right? Do they maybe leak him out some at some point during the season? Probably. They may have done it last week against Southern Miss. It'd have been a good time to, right? But when he's in the game, he's probably in there with one of the other guys. And so as a play caller defensively, who you choose to match from a personnel standpoint and what you want to be in from a front and coverage standpoint changes, right? 81 is kind of the most versatile guy. He can kind of go both ways. 6'4", 250. He's a good blocker. He's very adequate in the passing game. I think he had 2 touchdowns, I think, against Miami, and then 2 more the other night against Southern Miss. 4 touchdowns on 8 catches is a pretty strong ratio, right? They like getting those tight ends involved. Again, we're talking about an NFL background. We're talking about a guy that was in New England where you've had Gronk, and they've always liked their tight ends, right? You see that influence as part of this new Alabama offense. Billingsley is the guy that got a lot of note in the Miami game because he was suspended for the first part of the game. But he's a kid that last year was a major role in their offense because at 6'4", 230, and he probably wasn't 230 last year, he was a kid that could both return kicks and play tight end. Yeah. Like, he was so versatile.
Pretty rare.
Right? So what you see from him, he's a big-time athlete. They're going to dial things up specifically for him to try and use him because he is a mismatch issue. And, early in the season, only 6 catches but 2 touchdowns. But you see times where they are definitely trying to get him involved because they know as a playmaker what his potential looks like. So, just to kind of talk about this a little bit, you talk about 85, Kendall Randolph, and this is from the Florida game, right? And so Randolph stands out because he's the one here that looks like a guard, right? They've got 81 next to him. So they've jumped into what's called a 12P personnel grouping. So 12P tells you that it's 1 running back and 2 tight ends. Okay. So on the defensive, on the sideline for Ole Miss, you've probably, whether it's somebody holding up a board or it's just being screamed, somebody's yelling 12, 12, 12. It's not out of the question that they tag it with something else, 12 heavy, 12 whatever, to identify, hey, it's 85, not 81 and 19 in there together. Because, again, things look a little bit different in that scenario. But when Alabama comes out in this, is Ole Miss going to stay in the same type of defensive front that we've seen them use effectively against Louisville and against Tulane and these other teams? On this particular snap, Florida comes out and they put 3 big bodies over here and they get behind them. They come back and they run a traditional power scheme where he's going to pull for this front side backer. They're going to kick him out, and then they're going to give it to their tailback and let him get behind those big bodies. And this is like a 1st and 10 play right after they've crossed midfield. I think it's maybe the first play after a turnover, if I remember correctly. And instead of going up top to take a shot, they're trying to set the tone, right? And so they throw these big bodies in there and they go traditional power, get behind the left side of their offensive line, and it's 10, 11, 12-yard gain on the first play, right? They don't live in it the rest of the drive, but it's a tone setter. It's a short yardage, 1st down, we want to stay ahead of the sticks. Short yardage, we need to move the chains. This is the type of personnel grouping you're going to get, and it's going to be interesting to see when they do that with 85 in the game at tight end. How does Ole Miss choose to match from a defensive structure standpoint, and then also from a personnel standpoint? They don't have to completely change identities. They can play with the bodies they like to have on the field with those hybrid safeties. The question is, how long can those guys hold up if that's Ole Miss's game plan?
Gotcha.
Right. With Billingsley, we talk about him being such an athlete, and this was a way that they schemed up to get him a touchdown in the first half of the Florida game. One of the big elements that you see in NFL offenses is you see a lot of little motions. Sometimes it's a guy just takes a couple steps in, goes right back out. Sometimes it's all the way across the formation, whatever. And that's rooted in trying to give the quarterback identifiers and what type of coverage he's getting, right? Help identify, is it man-to-man? If there's somebody running with him, it's man-to-man. if the safeties rotate, right, there are things you can do to try to give the quarterback a clue on what the coverage is going to be. So you see a lot of that in what they're doing right now at Alabama. Okay. And you see it in Ole Miss's offense because, again, the pro style offense that Kiffin was rooted in, and even what Sarkisian was doing last year at Alabama. But you see it a little bit more, I think, right now, maybe out of this year's Alabama team. And again, it's that Bill O'Brien influence, right? So they started with all these receivers out wide, and then they took Billingsley and they motioned him down into this slot position. Once he is set now, they started this jet sweep motion with Mechie or one of the other receivers. So now, you have gone from a 10P formation structure where it's 4 wide, everything looks like pass. You bring the guy in, follow it up with a run motion, and you're trying to get the defense now to, hey, check, adjust, go fit the run. So what ends up actually happening is this outside receiver that I have labeled as the Z has a pressed corner. He takes an inside release on this slant route and literally goes and runs at the safety. It ends up creating a not so subtle pick on that safety.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to spin the coverage down now.
Yeah.
So as they do, Billingsley releases and he's going to push vertical and then back outside looking like a traditional corner route. And it's not uncommon for offenses to do things like this and do what's called flood the boundary. You put 3 players on different levels into the short side of the field or to the wide side of the field, and you try to create these different levels. Well, what they've done now by adding this little pick route is they put him to the corner, and if there is anybody sitting out here to catch that route, he just converts it now to this vertical shot. So it ends up being a real bind, particularly when this defender just got rubbed off by the outside receiver. So now he literally ends up running free down the sideline. They bring the tailback to give a nice little release under here in case there's something that comes hot off the edge. It gives him a nice little check down. It's tailback matched up on the linebacker against man-to-man coverage. And then you still have this out here as a potential check down if you don't like the picture down the field. So it's a nice design in the concept, and it's a nice way. Again, you help the quarterback identify coverage. You make the defense communicate and adjust their coverage. And then you set a rub for one of the most athletic players on the field. So, those are some of the things you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of those short little motions, a lot of things to adjust the strength of the formation. And a lot of it is about giving the quarterback those pre-snap identifiers. One of the things when you watch Alabama the last couple of years is how often they got those receivers just running free down the field. You don't see a lot of that right now. Not against Miami, not against Florida, right? And I honestly didn't have an opportunity to watch the Southern Miss game. You don't see, and some of it maybe is through design, some of it's maybe personnel, but some of the things that they've done in the past to free those guys up, right now those elements aren't there. What you see out of the quarterback, though, very much like we've talked about with Corral, is his willingness, his ability to hit it when it's there, but also his willingness to work the underneath and let your athletes work for you, right? And he's done a really good job of that. But they've also done a really nice job of protecting him and designing things to allow him to do that. So, that's kind of one of the things, talking about motioning to identify coverage. These are the types of things that again, that we like to see them do, because, when you cluster these receivers out here out wide, you force the defense to make a decision. Am I going to put 3 over 3? Am I going to put 4 over 3? Because technically this is a 4-man surface from a coverage standpoint to the defense, right? And a 1-man surface back on the tight end side. So now when they take this receiver and motion him back across, you've changed from a 4-by-1 to a 3-by-2 formation. And so you're going to get adjustment from the defense. You've just given the quarterback an opportunity to identify what's going to happen. Well, Florida wants to bring pressure here. And so they're trying to play some type of a man. So they're going to bring this guy off the edge. But the play itself, it's a traditional 3-vert concept, which is anytime you get a team that plays 2 high, 2 safeties, you attack them with 3 vertical routes and then something underneath. If you get a team that plays 1 high safety, you want to attack them with 4 vertical routes. Okay. So what they've done is they've built in the 2 high beater, because between the corner route and what is essentially almost like 2 post routes, it's a cross and then this outside post, you've now stressed the 2 safeties if they want to play too deep.
You force the safety to commit.
You do. If he commits here and he commits here, this backside corner is out leveraged in theory on that route. If the free safety keeps his depth here, then now you're replacing this other safety in that window with the route. It's a very common concept. You see at all levels. Ole Miss runs it. Everybody does, right? But
Sure.
What they've done now is they've protected him, because, again, you use this to help identify the motion, and you give yourself, if it is not cover 4 or cover 2, you give yourself this underneath route that if those backers are getting high and dropping out in their zones, you can give it to him. But that also relies as a hot route, just like the tailback relies as a hot route. So what's happened now is they've changed the formation, and Florida brings this pressure off the edge. He does a great job of recognizing it, not panicking, and turning and giving the ball here to the tailback on the swing, because now you're asking this linebacker to go cover him man to man.
And there's probably a speed difference there.
There is often a speed difference there. Right. So, again, when you talk about the design, and the interesting thing about this play to me, you can see the receiver I have with the orange route. I have him kind of this dotted line of this. One thing that Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma have really made popular the last couple of years, the Chiefs have been using it a ton in the NFL, is what a lot of people, this route's typically known as a shallow route. And people will tag sting to that shallow route. Whereas he starts to gain ground or starts to clear the box, he'll start to gain ground and run into the void that's been created by these other routes in zone coverage, right? So it gives you if you can protect it, it gives you a great release and potentially a big play down the field. So, it looked like he was starting to convert this into that sting route, but because of the pressure, he immediately had to turn and find his check down. So like you see a lot of NFL influence, but you can also see the things they have picked up from the college game that are translating into what they've already done, and has kind of been an addition to where they want to be now as an offense. Okay. If you get them in the 2nd and long and 3rd and medium, a big thing that you see in the NFL, a big thing that you see with the Patriots, that you saw out of Bill O'Brien's teams in Houston, is you see a lot of empty, and they really like going empty and attaching this tight end. Okay. You've created an extra run gap, so the threat of quarterback run does exist, and you kind of force, if this guy is split out wide, it creates issues from a passing structure concept. By taking him now and putting him attached to the offensive line as a true tight end, you create an extra run gap while still providing the same threats that you had as a passing in the passing game. So that they've done some interesting things. Okay. One of the things that they went to a few times in 2nd and long, 3rd and medium type situations against Florida are things that you clearly see when you watch a lot of NFL teams play, and that you've seen before with Bill O'Brien. And, he talks about one of the things that there's a clinic tape out there. It's him talking at I don't remember what clinic it was, but talking about one of the kind of primary staples of the Patriots offense, which is a play that's known as Hoss Wyjuk. And what they do typically is these guys either run corners or slot fade routes, depending on if it's zone or man-to-man. And so what ends up happening there, if it's man-to-man, if this guy's man-to-man on him and he's down man-to-man on him, you've got one of your best receivers in the slot now working vertical against the safety. So it's a built-in man-to-man beater, right? On the outside of those routes, so you've got your slot fades here. You run hitches on the outside, so you create a traditional smash that's good against certain zone coverages. And then the tag on it is typically Y juke. They give this receiver, and with the Patriots, it's Wes Welker, right? With Alabama, they probably love to do it with Mechie. They can also probably do it with Billingsley, where you give this guy, he's going to go and attack this backer. And if it's zone and everything clears out, he's just going to sit down and it's an easy throw for the quarterback. If he gets anybody trying to match him, right, trying to come hug his route right now, he is going to hesitate, jab, typically continue going into any open void that's now been created. Some guys that are really good at it will also give him permission to work back away from where he came. But now you talk about it's all you've done. You've used basketball analogies on here before. You've isolated a guy, right? And you're telling one of your more athletic players,
you cleared out one half of the court.
You've gotten into a freaking 1-4 low, and your point guard's got the ball, and somehow you got him matched up on the wing, and you're saying he's going to go beat him.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a real simple concept that you see, one of the kind of other things that you really see them do a lot. And Sean Payton really made this popular with the Saints recently, but you see it everywhere. LSU ran it a ton in 2019. It's not exclusive to the NFL. They'll take that same slot fade because, again, it's a great man-to-man beater from a matchup perspective. They'll still put him on the hitch. And then what they'll do now is they'll put this guy on the traditional Y stick, just this little quick out. Okay. So if you get man-to-man, you have the matchup here where you're trying to attack the safety. If you get zone or any pressure off this side, the stick route serves as a nice little man beater. It's a 6-yard route. You get it to him in rhythm. He's got a chance to turn, get you 7 or 8 yards. It's a really –
because in zone, the strong safety there is he's kind of going vertical.
In zone, he's going to collision and push out to the flat while he turns to
going vertical. Gotcha. So you have an open hole in the zone.
Exactly.
It's the whole concept of there's no way to defend everything.
Unless play man-to-man and have better dudes. I mean, that's the best you can. And even then, there's answers, right? Mansers, as coaches call them. So on the back side of this, there's a couple of ways that they attacked Florida, okay? One of the things that they did, and it's really just building on the same philosophy, was they put this guy on what's typically known as a glance route. It's a 5-step slant, okay? And then they put the outside guy on this little 1 or 2-step slant. And all the quarterbacks do in pre-snap is dividing the field in half. And he's looking for what are the numbers look like? If they have 4/3 to my trip side, then the math says I work the backside because at best it's 2/2 or 2/3 or 3/2, right? And if it's 3/2, that means that it's probably if they have 4 defenders to defend the pass here, and 3 defenders to defend the pass here, that means I'm getting a light rush, and there's a good chance I'm going to be able to escape and go get it if I don't like it. Okay. So against Florida, he would get 2/2 over here with 4 guys to the trip side. So the math told him I'm going to work weak. So now when you're getting that, you're basically talking about guys right here that are either playing man-to-man or they're playing some type of an alert switch concept where they now are going to communicate, hey, I'll take the first in, you take the first out. By providing 2 in routes, now you put this guy in a bind, right? Because if he takes this guy is in a bad leverage to take that. So early in the game, they jump in this play. They work this exact concept. They get 2 guys over the weak side, and sure enough, he has to take this glance, and they hit Mechie underneath here, convert for a first down on like 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11, right? It's a very easy read. The other way that they will do it is a very similar idea, but now what they've done is they put the outside guy on the same deal, and they give him now this little option route. He is going to run a slant at 1 step probably, and his goal is you slant until you can't. If he can beat that guy across his face right now, he takes him. Ball should be out. If he can't beat him across his face, he's going to stick his foot in the ground and work right back to the outside. Right. And so what's happened now, if you get that 2-over-2 and these two guys are trying to play that combo coverage and zone it off, well, if I take this and I take this, if I beat him, I'm good. If I don't beat him and I work back outside, this corner is now cleared. It's a very easy read for the quarterback. Get it to an athlete in space. And it's a free 5-6 yards. And if he breaks a tackle, it's a lot more.
Yeah.
But again, if you come back as a defense and roll this safety here and back him up, and so now you're playing this too high shell, well, it probably means that this guy has had to expand. This guy's probably bumped over some, as is he. So you've altered the run box. So now if you like quarterback run game, it's there. If you don't like quarterback run game, that Mike is still out leveraged on the stick route because somebody's got to be out there defending this vertical seam as well as the flat. So it's just a pure numbers game, right? And Bill O'Brien, they're going to do a lot of those things to try and control that. And I think when you look at what Ole Miss does defensively and the way they play with 6 defensive backs, you can mask a lot of things that you're trying to do by getting into empty. You clear that picture up to some degree for the quarterback. So I would not be surprised to see a lot of empty with motion on Saturday. When Ole Miss has the ball, I went back and I watched last year's game, and I'm going to share some clips with you here in a second. I think we'll see a lot of Ely used like they used Elijah Moore in last year's game for obvious reasons. And we'll talk more about that in a second.
Well, Jarian gave Alabama fits a year ago.
He did. He did. From the backfield in the slot, gave them problems.
Yeah.
But a lot of the success of our running backs against Alabama last year had a lot to do with Elijah Moore, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Ole Miss is going to need to get the tight end involved, and I say that because outside of the effect that number 8 had on the defense last year, 84 had a major effect on the defense last year.
So let me ask you this, because I know this is what people are thinking, because is the first thought that went into my mind. But Pete, they don't really have a tight end right now. So is that Dontario Drummond as a tight end, or is that a traditional tight end?
So here's the thing. When I say get him involved, he doesn't have to catch 7 footballs, right? They can use Drummond and do some things as a receiver, whether it's Drummond or somebody else. But even just in the formation scheme,
so call it Chase Rogers
in the blocking game.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That getting him involved in those ways can get you some of the same results. Yeboah had some really big plays last year against Alabama, but it wasn't, he had 2 or 3 really big ones, if I remember correctly.
But Yeboah struggled in the running game as a blocker against Alabama a year ago.
He did. They found some ways to help him,
yeah,
but he did struggle at times as well.
Okay.
Nothing different from Ole Miss as far as what they normally do, but I really expect them motion, tempo, formations, multiple formations, doing a lot of different things, giving them different looks. Ole Miss's ability to really go fast really hurts because, again, I talked earlier about the Sabanese, right? Nick Saban's defense, outside of maybe Venables and those guys, Dave Aranda, his kids are expected to communicate more both pre and post snap than most defenses are. And the reality is a lot of teams would love to be able to do what Nick Saban does, but they don't have the players to do it, right? And that's part of what makes him so good is he's been able to find the guys to do it. And some of it, I mean, Xavier McKinney was a safety for him. He's with the Giants now. I coached against Xavier when he was in high school. And he was a really good high school player. And when you talk to the coaches that coached him in high school, that was one of the things that they would tell you is, I couldn't tell you what the kid's GPA was. I couldn't tell you how he did in algebra class, but on the football field, he was really smart. And you could tell him things. He understood things. Conceptually, he could pick things up. So when you're Saban and you're rolling through and you're looking at film and you come into Roswell, Georgia to come recruit this 6'3" safety, one of the first things they know he can run. They see it on film. They know he can hit, right? How does he pick things up? How does he, is he cerebral enough to work in our system? So a lot of guys that you see defensively go into Saban's system and then not last, it's not a lot of times about their physical prowess. A lot of times it's probably about their ability to communicate and operate mentally within the structure of the system.
And that's also why tempo gives them fits, right? Because you have a limited amount of time to communicate a certain amount of jargon. And if it normally takes you 12 seconds to get it communicated and the play goes off in 7, well, do the math. There's 5 seconds of lost communication there.
Exactly. And so you're asking a lot. So I'm going to show you some examples. And this is from last year's game, like we talked about. Okay. And I'm going to start off showing you kind of in the run game, right? Some simple things that you saw in this game, but things that you also like. This particular play is a form of something you see in every game Ole Miss plays. Okay. And one of the things to notice right now is look at the Ole Miss offense. Everybody's in a stance. This is a 1st and 10, balls on the 37-yard line.
And Alabama's moving.
Alabama's still moving.
5 is moving. I don't know the number up at the top of the screen. He's
standing up, right?
Yeah.
All these guys are moving. They're trying to get it set. They're trying to communicate. Well, what Ole Miss is going to do right here, they're just going to run a basic counter scheme. Okay. And they've got some wrinkles that Levy brought with him from UCF, where traditionally the counter goes away from this tight end, where they're going to pull this guard here and he's going to come and insert and wrap right there. Well, one of the things that they did at UCF was instead they actually counter to this guy, and he's going to give a false read before tucking back behind him. Now, you can see they don't particularly block this great, but you've got these 2 hitches out here so that if just somebody's uncovered, it's an easy pre-snap. I see it. I'm throwing it right now. But what they've done is on this backside, this wide receiver with Mingo, they're going to put him on that glance route that we talked about earlier. He's going to try to win inside, typically 5 steps, and boom. If he can't win inside, he'll take an outside release if he has to. Corral, all he has to process. And again, from a defensive standpoint, you're communicating so many things. From an offensive standpoint, all Corral has to know is, hey, they got people out here. Okay, that's covered. All he's got to do now is find this safety. If this safety works down into the box, because so much of what Saban tries to do and what every good defense coordinator tries to do is add the 8th fitter to the box, get the extra guy into the run game. If that guy inserts into the box, I am trusting my receiver. I'm pulling the ball down. I'm throwing the glance route.
So this is a RPO.
Dead on.
Gotcha.
If this safety does not insert to the box, okay, then I am handing the ball off to my tailback. So that's all I have to process as the quarterback is he capping that route space?
Gotcha.
Or is it open?
Gotcha.
Right. But from a defensive standpoint, and when things are moving quickly, I have to really identify how much is going on. And then there's the run scheme. Okay. So you can see here, Corral, he's faking the throw right there. Mingo's able to win inside. He crosses face, which is what he's supposed to do.
So Matt literally read his first 2 steps back and gave the ball.
1,000%.
Simple read, yeah.
He knows, and honestly, he probably knows pre-snap just based on the depth of that guy. Yeah. He's at 12 yards. The corner's pressed. This safety being outside the hash, all that sells something to Matt. There's no way this guy's coming down in a hurry with this guy outside the hash.
Because even if he does, it's going to be a hard tackle from right there.
It is, because if they're expecting him to come down, then it's almost a guarantee that he's going back.
Okay.
Right. But because he's outside the hash,
you'd be man here. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But because this guy's showing blitz and this guy's outside the hash, this is not happening. It's very unlikely that it's happening against a tempo team in particular. You don't have time to bluff and disguise all that stuff. Right. So they hand it off. Is it blocked? Great. No, but when we go to this outside, go to the end zone copy here. All right. So now, you're Ole Miss, you're playing with 6 blockers against a 7-man box now, and he's not much of a threat. You're going to step and protect this gap and work late to him. But realistically, if you can win on the front side at all, this kid is good enough to make a lot of people miss. And we know that about him, right? So because they don't add, they keep the safety back. So right there, the guard misses. He's trying to, the 31, he does what's called squeeze the block. So the guard's trying to now do what's called log him, get to the outside shoulder, wash him down. He misses. 31 does a good job right there. Yaboa kind of has a hard time figuring out where to fit.
That's Robinson, by the way. For people who don't know who that is, that's Robinson, who is the one guy that Lane Kiffin has said this week is the guy that they most worry about defensively.
He's a stud, absolute stud.
Yeah.
But so here you go. You have starting linebacker matched up on your tailback, and who's good enough to win. And there's times where 8's going to win that matchup, but there's a lot of times where 9 is going to do what he did right there. So really simple decision for the quarterback, not even blocked great, but Ely's good enough to now go turn that into a first down. And Ole Miss is already moving. I mean, look at the offensive line at the end of this play. Right. Boom. Whistle's dead. Look at them all. They're going to get lined up.
Going to get lined up because they're
going to run the next play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So this is later in the game. Whoops. And again, let me rewind to my wide. So again, we talk about easy decisions for Corral and things that help the box in the run game. And that's what Lebby and Kiffin have done such a great job at Ole Miss, because they haven't had dominant offensive linemen. They've had adequate offensive linemen, dominant in spots perhaps, right? But the formation structure, again, you've stacked up over here 2 receivers. So if they put 2 over 2, you trust your odds, you throw it out there, you throw the fast screen. They've chose to put 3 over 2. They're playing this bracket out here because they feel like the screen can hurt them. Well, over here, you're not stacked up, but again, you've got, I believe that's more right there. So you got one of the most dynamic receivers in the country. Okay. You can put these kids on hitches. You can put them on slants, fade and out route, whatever you want to do over here. But what you've done now is, again, there's another triangle. So now you have 5 for 5. So you've created a numerical advantage for yourself.
Now you have 2 potential runners.
Exactly.
Okay. And what if you're the quarterback here, and I don't mean to mess you up. I'm just fascinated by this stuff. If you're the quarterback here, and I don't know who the safety is back here on the 47-yard line, but his eyes are in. Are you reading anything from his body language?
Honestly, not on this play, because all he cares about is, hey, there's 3 dudes out here. There's 3 dudes out here. Hand it off. That's all I've got to see.
Okay. Because you have an advantage the moment you hand it off, because really it's 7 on 5, given the fact that Matt's a runner.
It can be, yes, based on scheme.
Okay.
But so here he sees 3 over 2 on both sides, so he knows he's going to hand it off. Now, they ran this formation maybe 4 or 5 times in the game. I don't remember exactly. One time, this guy's down. They throw the screen out there, get 5 or 6 yards, right? One time they show this look, fake the screen and try to go vertical off of it. I think it ends up an incomplete pass or a scramble, right? But again, very simple. Use the formation to try and dictate a specific look. And it's easy to say, well, why doesn't every offensive coach do that? Well, some of it is having an understanding of what you're going to get from the defense, but also the players you have on the field, right? You have to have the right bodies out there for this to be effective, because if this kid doesn't have a good arm, they can give you 2 over 2 out here all day, and it's not going to matter, right? If this kid can't go make somebody miss in man-to-man, it's not going to matter. So the pieces play a factor, but the scheme does a great job of complementing the pieces.
So if you're Golding and Saban right here, go ahead and do
you're hedging your bet right here, right?
Because he does have a good arm. So how does that factor into your calculus?
Well, so what it boils down to is how much do you like your matchups, right? If you feel like you can cover the guys on the outside and the run is what you're concerned about, but whatever here on 1st and 10 has put them in a defense that is more of a zone-based defense. So that's why you see this look. And so that gets them now. And you can see it when we hit this, it's a minimal gain, but again, your first down, you just gained 5 yards. Okay. And you're back in your tempo. Let's go. But so you look here with Alabama, and they're really playing the front structure very similar to what Ole Miss defense is doing now. You got these 2 guys are in 4 eyes, so they're responsible for B gap. He is responsible probably for both of these A gaps, but if he gets flow, so for instance, if the zone goes this way, he fits here, he knows he's going to replace him, right? So in theory, you have 6 gaps, and now you're asking these 5 defenders to defend 6 gaps, right? It's a little bit of a conundrum for the defense. So here, Broker does a great job on the tackle right there. He and 54, I think that's Warren. It doesn't quite get to the backer, but it gets enough. Ben Brown does a good job at center on the nose right there, and Ely just fits it out and goes and gets vertical, and it's 5 yards on first down, and you're ahead of the chains now.
Jerry missed his read because he had a crease right there that he could have exploded through.
So he probably, if he's a hair patient, and the truth is, if we get any more of this nose, he probably hits it right there and it's a foot race, right? The nose does just enough. And that's a hard thing for that center to do right there. That's a hard job, but the nose does just enough to force him to bounce that.
Gotcha.
Now he's also reading here. That's a lot of people read the Mike linebacker on inside zone with their tailback. I can't promise you that's what they do, but you'll watch when the play starts, where does the Mike fit? He fits inside. So he's going to press it. Now he's going to try to go get on the waterfall. And he just gets out into the safety a little bit. Okay. So here's one down in the red zone, right? And we talked about the role that Elijah Moore played in the run game. So again, first of all, notice the chains aren't set. The offense is getting into their alignment. The defense isn't quite set yet. And we've already started motion. And they're
going rocket speed right now.
And it's one of the most electric players in the country doing it. And look at how many people, everybody's still talking. You get 13s trying to run with him. It's not a great situation to be in, but you also have this guy now who's realized, oh crap, that's Elijah Moore. I've got to be responsible for him. Well, look at that gap right there.
Yeah, it's going to open wide open.
If he's not worried about number 8, he fits right there, right? And you're talking about a potential minimal gain. Well, he doesn't fit because of all the eye candy. And so Snoop's able to get downhill right here.
It's so large, yeah.
They do a good job. So Bama has a stun on, right? So, and again, it's part of the motion. So they're going to cross face here with him, and he's going to plug here. He's expecting to get this fit from that safety. He's the cleanup guy. Moore's motion does just enough to freeze him. Yep. You don't get the cleanup guy.
Yeah.
And it's a long way for him to go to try to fit over the top when the initial action is right in his face.
Right.
So as a result, there's that eye candy. Boom. Right there. And 8 gets over the top. He fits it pretty clean.
But he wasn't in position to make a play.
Not in position at all.
Right.
So you end up, it's the backside linebacker it's a backside linebacker who ends up being the guy that really gets him on the ground right there. But you're talking about a red zone 1st and 9 run that gets you off of your tempo. Ball looks like it's going to be spotted on the 1 or 2 yard line.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great situation to be in for any offense. Okay. This is later in the game. Okay. And I'm going to show you a couple clips of this. I think I may have only decided to do one, but you'll notice. So here's Yeboah. That little fullback right there is number 8. And when I talk about maybe using Ely in the way that you used Elijah last year, this is what I'm talking about, because I want to go to the end zone of this. I'm going to skip straight to it.
And you could do it from a personnel standpoint because you have Parrish available to play the role.
1,000%.
Right.
1,000%. But here's what I want you to see is look at all these guys as they start getting lined up. Look at them all talking. Yeah. Okay. They're trying to communicate. And it's actually, I maybe deleted the wrong one. There's another clip where literally you see everybody pointing at him saying, there's number 8, there's number 8. Right. So what they ask him to do right here is come back across, and he doesn't even have to block that defensive end. He just has to show that he's going to. Right. And you can see as a result, and look, this is the same stunt. And some of this is great game planning, and Kiffin probably knowing some tendency here. There's the nose crossing face again. There's 32 there. What's he expect? He's expecting that outside fitter again. Well, where does the outside fitter go? He goes chasing number 8 because he's the best player on the field.
Yeah.
And so, boom, there's Ely. There's the safety. There's the end zone.
Yeah.
They do the exact same thing with Snoop Connor. later in the game for another big play, right? It's a great job of using the personnel. I mean, look at number 8 right there. He knows. Look at this backer. His eyes are right there.
Oh yeah, he's watching Elijah.
So even if this ball does cut back, there's the nose chasing him.
They're going. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's you've done a good job of taking a base scheme you already run. That outside zone scheme, Ole Miss was running it from day one, right? They window dressed it, found a way to control some eyes. Because the one thing about Nick Saban is so much of what he does lives in man-to-man principles. And that's a way to attack it.
So can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Because I want to stay here. I don't want to mess you up. But you just addressed the one thing that I've talked to a couple of coaches in college football this week that are like most fascinated in the following. It is Saban's DNA. And Saban's 70 years old. I mean, ask any woman. A man's not changing after 40. Well, he's 30 years past 40. Nick's not changing. And so they're going to play soft and drop 8. When Kiffin said that this week, I thought, oh, we're playing chess now. I mean, we're having fun with each other mentally. Saban's DNA is to press. It is to attack. It is to get you into 3rd and long so that they can do some of the things that they do with blitz and make plays and hit the quarterback and cause turnovers. That's who they are. Pete, he's won 27 national championships doing that.
It's in their arsenal to drop 8, but you're more likely to see 2-man, which I can talk you through, than you are to see a ton of drop 8, in my opinion.
He doesn't want to get beat playing drop 8.
No.
If he's going to get beat, he wants to get beat attacking your ass.
Amen. Yes.
I mean, am I crazy or is that?
No, I think that is his MO. And even
Lane knows it. And so when Lane does the thing this week where he goes, oh yeah, they're going to drop 8. And that's what we've practiced all week. That's just Lane going, I'm in your head and you know it.
It's also Lane telling Kiffin or Lane telling Saban, we're not idiots.
Yeah.
We're preparing for your stuff. We're preparing for Rat and we're preparing for Zorro and all the different pressures you have and all the different stuff you do. And there's no doubt about that. So, all right, this is the same run. Okay. Same play later. Look at them all. This is the one I was talking about. I should have tricked you and put it first. Look at all these guys.
Yeah, they're lost. They're all pointing at Elijah.
Everybody's looking at number 8.
Yeah, everyone. Look at that. Even 29's looking across. 13's pointing at him.
Yeah.
9 back in the back is talking about him.
Everybody's communicating.
Unreal.
So what happens?
He goes right, and everybody goes that way.
If anybody wants to know why Nick Broker might have a future in the NFL, watch this play.
Okay.
You can go watch the one from Arkansas last year where he buries the guy 10 deep in the end zone. Watch. He gets beat. His athleticism on this play is astounding.
Okay.
He's beat. He's falling. Look at him get himself. Guys, it's 300 plus pounds. Look at him get up unbalanced and still be in a position to maintain.
And not hold.
I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of people that would tell you that might be a hold, right? But that athleticism right there that's what people don't understand about how good some of these guys are at that level. But again, it's an easy read for Snoop. He's reading the end man on the line of scrimmage. Look at all those bodies. Look at all these guys. They're all going with him.
Yeah, Matt does a really good job. Matt does a really good job on the fake there.
Matt does a great job on his play fakes. But here's the other thing too. Every time they ran this, they took Yeboah and sent him there.
Okay.
So now it looks like it's a bootleg, 1,000%, right? So now there you go. There's Snoop, easy read, boom, get to the outside. Big gain. You're in the red zone now.
Yeah.
Rocking and rolling. Okay. So, those are some of the little things. Now, Lane also dialed up some stuff that was pretty salty. This was early. This was first drive of the game. Okay. They're playing here. He's man to man. He's playing zone. He's going to bail out here. What they're probably playing is Nick Saban's Rip Liz match. Okay. But when they give motion, that has to change. So the star here that's down now is going to have to rotate, and these safeties are all going to have to change position. Well, you talk about eye discipline. Somebody is now responsible for him if he releases. Watch what happens. There's the motion. Look at everybody pointing. They're communicating. They're getting their check. Okay. They fake it there to Ely, turn and pump it like they're going to throw it out there to Elijah, and watch Yeboah. He hesitates, boom, goes and finds it right now. Now, the backside safety, number 3, doesn't do a very good job right here. He's probably responsible for him, but he's expecting help from this linebacker. Well, when he gets the motion right there, you see him working to the middle of the field. His eyes are now in the backfield because if he sees run, he has to be able to stick his foot in the ground and be late support. Well, that's all that they need right there to now find Yeboah. And, you're talking first drive of the game now, and you're getting out and getting down in the 10 on your second or third offensive play of the game.
I mean, that's the ultimate eye candy, right?
It's ultimate eye candy. It's great play design. It's Nick Saban knowing, or it's Lane Kiffin knowing what you're likely to get from a Nick Saban defense. But it's just, man, it's people have been running Y pop for years, right? This is just another way to do it out of the spread. This is one you talk about, last year, how Ely had a big game against them, and this is one that got away from them. But it's the same kind of deal where you're bringing the motion here with 8. And so we've talked about how Ole Miss will do this and bring Ely down the pipe and kind of triangle off. We talked about that going into either Austin Peay or Tulane. Okay. Watch what they're going to do here. They're going to actually take him and bend him. He's going to stack behind him and then turn into this corner route. Okay. And they just miss it. But again, the motion, the forced communication, the changing of eyes, and then the stacked releases, they sort it out. They end up where they need to be from a coverage standpoint, but the release and the athleticism of Ely, it's there. If the protection is any better right here and he can throw a clean ball, 9 catches that with a chance to get down the sideline for a real big play.
Yeah.
And those are some of the things that I think Ole Miss fans have heard about with things that they're doing with Ely in the slot. And maybe those are some of the things that I think will start to show up in the next couple of weeks, potentially for the offense.
Yeah, I don't think they've shown any of that stuff, and I think it's been intentional.
They've honestly, I think they've been very basic in the 3 games they've played.
Super vanilla.
If I could get my hands on the coach's film, I think I would find less than 20 actual schemes. Just
I always use the ice cream analogy because it's just, I'm stupid. It's vanilla ice cream. They've thrown a couple of chocolate chips in there a couple of times. They've put a little caramel or some fudge ripple, but man, they haven't gone crazy.
Nope.
I mean, they haven't put like all the crazy stuff like Captain Crunch or granola or
no gummy worms.
No gummy worms. They're not anything in there. That's like, oh wow, look at that. It's like, oh, okay, it's some chocolate chip. I mean, that's all they've done so far, because I think they've known they were going to win those 3 games.
Yeah.
I think they knew they were going to win them easily.
They probably had things on the call sheet that they did not call because they did not need to.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah.
But now you're at the point in the season where just in case is right now.
Oh, it's today.
So this is one, you need to stay out of 3rd and long against Nick Saban, plain and simple.
That's where he's dangerous.
It's where he's most dangerous. And it's because of the bodies that he's got and the things that he can do. I mean, you look right here, it's simulated pressure. You got 2 down linemen, his best rush end, one of his best linebackers walked up. You got all these dudes creeping back here. There's a whole lot going on.
And they always have studs in the secondary.
Always.
So if you fall behind the chains, you're really playing with fire.
Yep. So going back, this is almost the same scheme I showed you earlier that Alabama runs. They're going to push him up in vertical. They're going to get these guys in some version of a vertical or crossing route, and then they're going to bring that underneath guy. So it's the typical 3 verts to beat 2, but you're adding some different elements. And what they do right here that's interesting to me is they check release him. So he's going to be here for pressure. If that guy comes, he's got him. When he doesn't come, this guy that's man-to-man on him, you see, is outside leveraged. He almost has to be, right? So what ends up happening is because he's outside and he gets a little depth to protect himself, is he hesitates to see if it's pressure and releases. It creates a nice opening because they've now cleared everything out from the opposite side for him. The offensive line does a good job. They handle the stunt well right there because they will give you some really nice exotic stunts up front. 32, he is here. He is matched up on this back right there. He's there to protect the screen. Okay. So, and what they're trying to do right here is they're trying to play that 2-man that I talked about earlier. So what happens is you're man, 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 and now you've got 2 safeties over the top to now clean things up. And then they're going to play games with these guys in here to try and generate rush, right? Well, one of the ways that you do that is by compressing the formation, and they've condensed everything a little bit here. And then they use this nice little delay from Yeboah to create the leverage. And now he's just able to go outrun the safety and get a first down, right? And if they can find ways to get little things like this from their tight end against Alabama this week, I think it'll be big for the Ole Miss offense. Here's one, 3rd and short. I swear the corner was offsides before the ball snapped. But what they're doing here, right, they're giving Corral a very easy read.
He is totally offsides, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, totally.
But you're giving him an easy read. It's 3rd and 2. Nick Saban's going to play man-to-man. They're going to bring pressure, right? They're going to protect the run box here. So they're going to short motion. And all they're going to do right here is they're going to put him on some type of a vertical stem, whether it's a dig or an out or a corner. It almost doesn't matter, okay? Because what they're looking to do right here is they're going to now set him up. And this is probably an option route. If nobody's there, he sits right there. It's an easy little stick route. If there's anybody trying to trail him, he's going to just push out right now and try to outrun him. And it's an easy throw. Truth is, he starts friggin' 3 yards deep in the backfield and probably doesn't run his route quite at the depth that Kiffin wanted. But you can see he motions back in. So now you've got these 2 defenders are playing an IO. Okay, one's taking inside, one's taking outside. So, but now when you work this vertical release, you have to give up a little bit of depth right there, because if he continues to go inside, and if I let this guy go, then I'm in trouble, right? And even though I've got some safety help behind me. So here we go. All right, what they choose to do right there, they come down, they communicate it. He does what's called, and Saban has popularized a lot of these terms, MEG. So as he comes in, they probably tell that guy, hey, Meg, 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 and that means man everywhere he goes. So no matter what that guy does, I'm everywhere he goes, bathroom, I'm with him, right? The other one would be with the other one, man coverage, yes. Yeah. The other one would be what they call mod, which is man on demand or man over depth, right? But right here, he's going to meg it, so now he's man-to-man on him. This is just as good as any situation that Kiffin could have asked for, because now there goes, I think it's Drummond. Look at him release inside.
Yeah.
He's pulling the corner with him. He's also setting a little bit of a rub for that guy. And as soon as Elijah breaks out, you throw it before the defender can react. And all he's got to do is catch and turn his shoulders, and it's a first down.
Yep.
It's an easy man beater. It's probably something they carry in their playbook every week and rep it 3 times all week long. And that's it. And you play ball. Right. But again, it's understanding tendency. It's doing the little things. And you see Corral, I mean, he's looking out there at the motion the whole time. When he turns to call for this ball, he already knows where he's going with it because he's seen how the defense has reacted. There's no hesitation. They sprint out to it, give him an easy throw, athlete in space. This is a 3rd and 12. Okay. Ole Miss used a lot of mesh concepts against Alabama last year. And Kiffin gets pretty upset about this one, I believe, because I think this is the one where Yeboah gets called for offensive pass interference. But typically what you're doing is you're going to level things off in some shape or fashion here, and these 2 guys are going to work this mesh. And you're trying to set the screen for him coming underneath right there. So here, 3rd and 12. It's safe. They protect with 6 so they can pick up the pressure. There's the 2-man that I talked about earlier. 2 safeties like cover 2, but we're man-to-man, 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 man-to-man. One of these guys or both of those guys are responsible for the tailback.
A call they never make against Alabama, by the way. Never call.
But you can see right there, it's pretty blatant. Yeboah pretty much puts his hands up and blocks the guy. But they get it to Drummond right there. He turns up, and you can see Kiffin down here at the bottom throw his hands up, spikes a clipboard because he knows they got the flag.
Yeah, Kenny did not sell it very well.
Not at all. But right here. It's 3rd and 12. They know what to expect right here. It's a great call. It's good execution. You take the penalty away out of 84 and it's a first down. So,
yeah, for sure.
What happens is they now back up. They have to play again. They go 3rd down. They end up in a 4th and 5. So Ole Miss gets in a different formation and comes back with the same scheme. Now, instead of protecting with the back, they're going to do something that really was a big part of Alabama's scheme last year, and they're going to rail this back. And we showed you Tulane doing it against Oklahoma, right? So all he's got to identify right here is it man-to-man? And it is. He can tell these guys are all playing some version of man.
So
there's your free safety. So he's got the back.
Oh,
well, he's got a whole lot of traffic to run through to get the back right here.
Yeah.
So as soon as that ball snapped, Elijah Moore, he's just getting held, and it helps the offense. Boom, give it to Ely right now. He makes him miss. You see Kivin's got the hands up.
Hands up, yeah.
You don't get in the end zone.
He actually thought he had a touchdown there because he thought Jarian would beat that one guy. Yeah,
for sure. Right. But here's Alabama. They're being who they are. They're playing man-to-man. This is cover one. They're bringing pressure right there, expecting to get to Ely, and they almost do, or get to Corral if he has to hold it any longer. But you've given him an easy out with the football.
Yeah, that's why I think when you ask Saban to be a soft, drop 8, it's like asking a puppy dog to wait for the other puppy before you eat your dinner.
1,000%. And just to show you, later in the game, 3rd and 5 now, same call, literally. You start Ely on by the tight end. You rock him over to the other side. What'd that just do? Look at him communicate.
What is 32 saying here?
He's changing the check.
Okay.
He's probably getting them into some type of a zone check right now. Notice they've got 2 high safeties. The last clip I showed you, they have 1 high. So they're probably right here trying to play their 2-man again and be man-to-man on everybody. So right here, before he moves, I've got him, right? These 2 are responsible for those 2, tight end and tailback. As soon as he rocks, now it's a 4x1 surface. So he's probably trying to get into some type of a zone so that they don't get rubbed off to give up the big play that they gave up earlier. So there they go. See how now they zone it off. Now the corner catches the wheel route and everybody just takes what comes to them. Well, 2 things have happened now. Because they chose to play with a second safety, they lost a low hole player that can take the quarterback. They don't have a spy. The other thing that's happened now again is with this guy that's man-to-man on the tight end. Look at him. He's outside leverage. So now when Yeboah comes across, right, pocket's any cleaner, it's an easy throw right there to 84 for a first down, but the pocket collapses. So what does Matt do? He steps up, and there's nobody for him. When you choose to play man-to-man,
because the middle linebacker
want to play a lot of 2-man, the quarterback run game is 100% what can beat you. So you can see it here, right? Boom. He's got 84 if he wants him. There's just enough pressure to the left. He steps up, go get the first down. Boom. And, Rebs are rolling. So, I think that chess match of, are they going to play 2 high, 2-man? Are they going to play more of their zone coverage? And how aggressive are they going to be against the Ole Miss offensive line? I think that's going to be a big, big question about how Saban and Golding choose to attack the Ole Miss offense.
You look for a high-scoring game? Both quarterbacks running a lot?
I'll say this. When I watched Alabama, the quarterback can run. He's an athlete. But his patience, and he wants to get the ball out. He wants to get it out of his hands. There are times, especially in the Miami game, where I was really impressed because he didn't run and he waited on something to come open. So I don't know if it'll be necessarily a lot of quarterback run game. I wouldn't be shocked to see a good bit of it out of Ole Miss. High scoring games, the only chance I think Ole Miss has to win it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't expect it to be just a defensive shutout on either side. I don't know if it's going to be what it was last year, right? But I think, I think you're going to have to be in the 30s at minimum to win this game.
Yeah, I think so too. I've heard people talk about 50s. I'm like, I just don't see that. a stop or two, and I think Alabama's going to want to control some tempo. They don't want their defense on the field that much.
Agreed.
I think it kind of comes down to how clean can Corral be, and can you get a lead on Alabama, because Alabama's human, and can you get a lead on them where they start chasing points?
Yep.
Where they get out of their plan. And if they get out of their plan, it could get squirrely for them.
The cliche that people get tired of hearing is games are won and lost at the line of scrimmage. And you go back and you watch Alabama last year and Waddle and all those guys. I mean, they're incredible, and they killed people and diced you up in the secondary every week. But they did that because they gave their quarterback time to do that.
And
right.
Not as good up front this year.
They're probably not the same. But again, I think that, I think based on who Ole Miss has played, there's still some questions maybe about what they really are up front.
Sure.
Right. And so, I think ultimately it comes down to defensively who generates more negative plays with their front four or their front five. Right. I think that's what it's going to come down to mostly. There's going to be explosive plays. Both sides are going to find ways to get explosive plays. It's who can consistently stay ahead of the sticks and not get behind the chains. Because if you get behind the chains to Nick Saban, it's hard to play offensive football. And even if you're Ole Miss, who's with the structure of what they do defensively, like I showed you the little empty set that Alabama likes on second and long. Well, some of that plays into what Ole Miss is doing defensively into their hands, right? So who can get you into those negative down and distance situations? That's going to ultimately be what decides this game. That and turnovers.
Pete, as always, really appreciate it. People are going to love this, I know, and look forward to talking to you next week. We'll talk about what went right, what went wrong against Alabama, and we'll look ahead to a completely different type of opponent in Arkansas.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Take care.
That was Pete DeWeese. Enjoy that every single week. Pete is so generous with his time. And if you get away from that feeling like, oh, gosh, I don't really know football, welcome to the club. It's why I never write those kinds of pieces. I know people who do. I have friends who do it, and I always almost cringe for them because I hope they're right, because you could be so wrong, because the game that sometimes you feel like you're watching is not the game that's actually happening, and certainly not the game that people like Pete are watching, who are working with film and diagramming and all that stuff every single day. All right, we talked a lot this week, and we'll talk more in this show about the Ole Miss perspective on this game Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Kind of wanted to reach out and get a little bit of an Alabama perspective. We visit every week with Ryan Brown of Next Round Live in Birmingham. I was on their show earlier in the week. Ryan returns the favor every week here on the MPW Digital Pregame Show. So we talked about the Alabama perspective as they get ready for the Rebels, and then we talked about Auburn and some other key SEC games that are coming up this week around the league. So here is Ryan Brown. Enjoy. Ryan Brown is with us from the Next Round. Ryan, good to be with you as always here as we get ready for another huge weekend in the SEC.
Neal, I hope everything's going well for you in the state of Mississippi. Kind of crazy over here this week. Big sporting weekend over here. Talladega is in town. The race is in town. Ricky Stenhouse was on our show today, big Ole Miss fan. We talked some about the game with him. Auburn's at LSU. UAB is opening their brand new stadium downtown. First game ever to be played at Protective Stadium. So it's actually a pretty active week around here.
I've not been in UAB's new stadium, but I've been by it a couple of times, and I love it. It looks fantastic, and I like the location, and that's really cool. That's a major upgrade. I mean, nothing against anybody who happens to be a giant fan of Legion Field. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but it's just a game changer for that program. I would think it has to feel awfully good for Bill Clark and the guys.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. It will also host the Birmingham Bowl, so that'll have an SEC team in it. Not suggesting that it'll be anyone viewing this that's an Ole Miss fan. They'll be better than the Birmingham Bowl. But I'm bringing that up. At some point, it's going to have some SEC teams playing in it, and it's a cool spot. Parking is going to be an issue. They built it right downtown, but I think it's a cool spot, and it's cool to see UAB getting their own stadium. To think that program, and I know we're not here to talk UAB, but that program went from just a few years ago to being completely shut down to opening their new stadium Saturday is a pretty remarkable leap from where that program was.
It absolutely is. It's a great story. I have a major soft spot for Birmingham and really like it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see them do well. I'm looking forward to the basketball season with Andy Kennedy, and I know he's got a bunch of guys, and including KJ Buffin, the former Ole Miss players on that team now. So that I kind of follow them a little bit. All right, let's get into this because we've had 2 weeks here at MPW Digital and RebelGrove.com of Bama Respect Week. And it feels like we have paid more than the appropriate amount of respect to Nick Saban and his program and everyone affiliated with it. It has almost become a religious thing at this point. Tell me the Alabama perspective on this, because I know the Ole Miss perspective at this point. What is the Alabama fan perspective and then your perspective on this game?
I think deep down inside, Alabama fans don't 100% trust Pete Golding still. And I think deep down inside, there's a fear that the issues in Pete Golding's defense that were magnified by Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin and Elijah Moore and Snoop Connor and Jerry and Ely and Kenny Yeboah and anybody that played in an Ole Miss uniform last year on offense, that those underlying issues are still there. And they're just waiting for somebody to expose them. And I think Alabama fans had hoped that wasn't the case until Alabama went to Florida. And in many ways, Emory Jones exposed some of those still underlying issues. And Florida was able to run the football. And I think that has Alabama fans a little bit worried, because I think what Alabama fans look at is, hey, those issues are still there. You haven't fixed everything. And Matt Corral is infinitely better than Emory Jones. And if Emory Jones can have success here, what are Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral going to do? That is what Alabama fans, that's what's keeping them up at nights this week. That plus the fact that you no longer have this prolific offense to bail you out of these situations. Now, look, Alabama's still plenty good at the quarterback spot, but you can't deny the fact that they pumped all these guys into the NFL, from the offensive line to Najee Harris in the backfield to Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle at receiver. And even Alabama, of all teams, even Alabama can't just plug guys in and get that level of play. That's not to say that the guys they're plugging aren't great, but they're not going to get Heisman Trophy level of play on a guy just like that. So I think those are the two things about this game to keep Alabama fans up at night.
It's the one thing I don't know that Saban gets a ton of credit, and he deserves all the credit. When everybody says, hey, he's the greatest ever, you almost just sort of stop there, right? You're the greatest ever.
Yeah.
Period. You're the GOAT. But he also has done this thing where they lose guys, mass exodus to the NFL all the time, and they replace it and reload, and there they go again. But you kind of kept waiting for there to be a year where the fall off was visible. And I think offensively it is. When I watch Alabama's offense, it's not that machine. And God, last year, man, they were unbelievable. This one's good, but it's not unbelievable, which I want to stay there for a minute. If I told you, hey, Ole Miss puts up 42 points. Ole Miss puts up 42 points. They put up 48 a year ago and left some on the field, frankly, last year. If I told you Ole Miss scores 42 points, would you say Alabama's in trouble, or would you say, no, I think they're fine? I think this offense could match that and then get them over the hump to 45, 49, whatever.
Yeah, so the variable in this is I have watched Ole Miss's defense, and I think they're better, maybe even significantly better. But then they've not played an offense like this. I mean, I don't think anybody pretends that Malik Cunningham in Louisville or anything close to Bryce Young in Alabama.
Right.
So that's the variable there. I think if you told most Alabama fans, I'll give Ole Miss 42 points right now, I think Alabama fans would be like, boy, that's going to be a little out of my comfort zone, but I'm willing to take that gamble. If you'll just stop them at 42, and I believe that. I think Alabama could probably exceed 42. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be a fun game. But, yeah, once you get north of 42, I would say – I think you picked a good number there. I would say all bets are off. And, again, some of this is I just don't know – DJ Durkin's defense, how much better is it? It looks better, and I do, I think it is, but how much better? So, and listen, there are always variables you can't count on in a game, but I think if you told most Alabama fans, and probably Pete Golding and Nick Saban, I'll give Ole Miss 42 and you go play offense, I think they'd probably take that and feel confident they're going to get a win.
I think what's interesting is if that scenario unfolds where Ole Miss is scoring and scoring and scoring, the last year, I've never thought Alabama had to really sweat it, right? As long as you don't turn it over, you're fine because they weren't stopping them, and you could get those chunk yards running the ball whenever you needed it. Their receivers were open. Ole Miss couldn't stop anybody. They are better defensively this year. They're better up front. I don't know how much better. They're incredibly better at linebacker. It's not even close. And then much better in the secondary too. What will be interesting to me is if Ole Miss gets up, say 2 scores, call it 21-10 for a minute,
okay,
kicks and giggles. Does Alabama stay? It's still a new offensive coordinator. It's a lot of new offensive line coach. It's a lot of new coaches. Do they stay disciplined and stay balanced, or do they start going, hey, this guy over here is really good and he's going to score a lot of points, and it's Lane Kiffin, and do they start chasing points? And sometimes when you start chasing points, that's when things spiral.
The interesting thing about that is they haven't really been balanced as it is. I mean, they've thrown the ball much more than they've run the ball. Alabama hasn't run the ball particularly well this year. And it's no knock on Brian Robinson and Jason McClellan. I think they're good running backs. They're not Najee Harris. Najee Harris might have been the best Alabama running back of all time, and that's pretty good running backs to come through.
Oh, I don't think there's any question that he was.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, you're talking about Derrick Henry and Bobby Humphrey and Sean Alexander and Mark Ingram. There's some really good running backs that have played at Alabama, and Najee Harris is right there with them.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was a big loss, obviously. I'll tell you, they've I'm not going to say they've stumbled into these things, but we've seen Alabama kind of discover and work these things into the offense. Number one, Jason McClellan is a really good receiver out of the backfield for Alabama. He's established himself as that. So he kind of picks up where Najee Harris was in catching the ball out of the backfield. Brian Robinson is a solid running back, but McClellan is really good. They've thrown it to him a lot out in the flat, very kind of pro style like Bill O'Brien was. And then Jaleel Billingsley was suspended for the first hour. Maybe not suspended. He was in Nick Saban's doghouse for the first half of the Miami game. So it took him a minute to get involved. And it allowed Cameron Latu, who was a guy that started at Alabama as a linebacker, he's a tight end now, and he scored 2 touchdowns against Miami. So now many times, Neal, they've got Billingsley and Latu in the game at the same time, the 2 tight end set that a pro-style guy like, Bill O'Brien, but he used to feast on that, right? Back in the Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez days, back in New England, that type of deal. So it's one of those things where they've kind of discovered that they've got that. And it has caused some issues for some defensive coordinators. And I do think if you can do this, if you've got a single back, you've got, say, John Mechie, Jamison Williams, who's a really good deep threat. He returned 2 kickoffs for a touchdown. And then those 2 tight ends in the game, that's a pretty formidable passing attack right there. But Alabama hasn't been particularly balanced running the ball. They've thrown it more than they've run it. So in your scenario where you're down 21-10, maybe they throw it even more. I don't know. I would tend to think Bill O'Brien, as a guy that's got real deep history in pro football, most of those guys approach it from more, how many possessions do we have left, right? You watch a lot of, you're a Giants fan. So let me think about this. I don't know how much NFL you watch. You're a Giants. I'm a Dolphins fan.
I'm a Bears and Bengals fan. I'm not a Giants fan.
I thought you were a Giants fan. Am I wrong about that?
You're thinking about Jeffrey.
Oh, okay.
Jeffrey Wright.
You're a Bears and Bengals fan.
Yeah.
So you do watch some NFL. I just, those guys approach it like you watch the NFL. They got 8 or 9 possessions, right? And they know, all right, I got to make these possessions matter. I'm going to get 8 or 9 possessions. So I do think it'd be interested to see how Bill O'Brien attacks this.
All right, we'll finish up with your prediction on that, but I'm going to get to a couple other things while I've got you. Weird week at Auburn. I know it was a strange week for you guys. I thought y'all handled it remarkably professionally. I thought Bo Nix did too. He had a weird game against Georgia State. He got benched in favor of TJ Finley. Brian Harsin fires an assistant coach on Sunday or Monday, whatever it is. It's still September. As people see this, it'll finally be October. But, I mean, that's a lot of drama for a non-con game at the end of September at Jordan-Hare. What's your pulse of the Auburn program right now?
Yeah, I mean, where to even start on this? It's crazy. I mean, well, first of all, I think the big question going to LSU, and perhaps it's been answered by the time people see this, but as of now, it's not. It's who's the starting quarterback. Is it going to be TJ Finley, who of all places transferred in from LSU? He comes in, he saves the game for Auburn last week against Georgia State, leads them on a 96-yard touchdown drive to end the game. Or are you going to go back to Bo Nix with maybe the short leash of knowing, hey, I got this guy here that's pushing me now. And if you're Brian Harsin, I can always go back to TJ Finley. I don't know. It's an unenviable position for Brian Harsin because I don't know that either option is great right now. And to make matters, I don't know if it makes matters worse or what. You had to fire a coach already. And like you said, we're September and you're already firing a coach. It was just such an odd situation there where you're firing a wide receiver coach of all things. It just looked odd. And, a lot of people were like, oh, he's already, and Tony Franklin, the former Auburn offensive coordinator, who should be noted, he coached at Troy with Cornelius Williams, the coach that got fired, and he's got ties with him. But, he was real critical saying, this is old Auburn again. This is old Auburn. Well, if you look at it from the outside looking in, Neal, he fired the local guy and he promoted a Boise guy. Old Auburn would be go fire one of your Boise guys and we want, one of Auburn's guys in this job. Yeah. So it's kind of the opposite of old school Auburn. So I don't know that was it at all. I do know it's not what you want to be doing 4 games in. You don't want to be already firing assistant coaches.
You have a thought on how that game turns out in Baton Rouge? Neither team has really blown anybody away just yet.
I think more than quarterback, I think it depends on the health of Owen Popo, the Auburn linebacker, because when he's been out of there, teams have been able to run the ball pretty well on Auburn. And LSU doesn't run it particularly well to begin with.
No.
So, I think you could almost, if you've got Popo and Zacoby McClain in the center of that Auburn defense, you could almost entirely take the LSU run game away and make them, very, very one-dimensional. In that situation, I probably would like Auburn. It's just Auburn has not won there since 1999. It has been you were there for that one.
I know.
A long, long time since Auburn has won down at Baton Rouge. So I think not knowing the quarterback, not knowing Owen Popo's status, I think I probably go LSU in a close
one. Arkansas gets the free shot of all free shots on Saturday. No one expects them to do anything. They're an 18-point underdog. They're ranked 8th in the country. If they win, it's just a monumental story. And if they lose, it's okay. No big deal. It's kind of what we thought.
Who expects you to be here? You were number 8. Yeah.
Do you give Arkansas any chance at all of keeping the game close, competitive, having a shot late?
Georgia's defense is giving up 5 points per game, which is just absurd through a month, but they have played no good offenses. I mean, Clemson's offense is terrible.
Awful.
It's awful. And then UAB, God love Bill Clark and all he's done. One thing he's been is offensively challenged. They just they don't have a prolific offense. They live on that defense. And, they got outclassed. He's played South Carolina, who's part of the year had an assistant coach playing quarterback. I mean, they just really have not played a good offense at all. So this is the first halfway competent offense they played. So I expect Arkansas to have more success against Georgia than anybody has as of yet. They're not going to score 5 points, right? They're going to score more than that. I just don't think they can keep up, though. KJ Jefferson being a little bit banged up coming out of that Texas A&M game is a huge question, I think. One thing Arkansas can do, though, Neal, is they can shrink a game because of the way they can run the football. And that's Sam Pittman's DNA. He is going to run the football. So I anticipate they can go in there and shrink that game a little bit and limit Georgia's possessions, and maybe Georgia wins by 7-10. But I still think Georgia wins the game, no matter the strategy they use, unless Georgia starts turning it over, which is something they haven't really done.
Yeah, the one thing that's interesting in that game, and I took Georgia and laid the points, but if JT Daniels, if Kirby's not just kind of playing games a little bit, if that's real and he's super limited, I kind of wonder, because Arkansas's defense is legit, and if you're having to go do the Stetson Bennett route, it can get iffy on you.
Yeah, that's tough. And the one thing I would say too is that I think Kirby Smart, the coach, Kirby Smart, is more comfortable playing the style of play that Sam Pittman plays. He has been really hesitant to open that offense up and embrace the stuff like Alabama is doing and Ole Miss is doing. So you wonder if, as a coach, he gets kind of sucked into that style by Sam Pittman, in which case that favors Arkansas. If they go really conservative and Georgia is trying to hammer the ball and Arkansas is trying to hammer the ball, that, to me, keeps Arkansas in the game.
Yeah, it's a basketball game where one team wants to play shot clock and possession and half court, and the other team says, okay, well, we'll do that too.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we're not particularly comfortable, but we'll try it, yeah.
Yeah, and so you shorten the game, and before you know it, it's like a 4-minute, 6-minute game, and anybody can win. No one talks about this game, and I'm guilty about this. I spent the entire summer telling anyone who would listen that I thought Kentucky was the big sleeper in the SEC East, and Here they are. They're 4-0. And if you had told me if the football gods had come down and said, hey, they're 4-0, here, look at, I would see, there you go. But I know what my eyes tell me. Kentucky have any shot in Lexington against the Gators?
I really don't think so. I mean, you talk about games that, teams haven't won in forever. I don't know the last time they beat. I think it was 84 the last time they beat Florida in Lexington. Am I right about that?
86. Top Gun was in
86.
Yeah.
Well, Top Gun 2.
Yeah,
it's about to be in theaters.
Well, that's the rumor. The rumor is they're making a Top Gun 2, but I'm starting to have my doubts.
I've seen a trailer. I don't know if it's just a big ruse, but I've seen a trailer. Yeah, I really don't, because like you said, if you go back to the week where they're playing the Fighting Terry Bowdens and Will Levis looks like a Kentucky quarterback we've never seen under Stoops, I'm with you. I'll look at that and I'm like, okay, Kentucky way better than I thought. But it seems like just over the weeks, they've progressively gone back to that offense that they had under Eddie Graham last year. And then last week they go to South Carolina and they only score 16 points against South Carolina is the second worst team in the league. There's no other way about it.
Yeah.
And you go up there and you win 16-10. That looked a lot like the Kentucky teams of the last 3 or 4 years. So, I think Emory Jones is playing really good football now. I think at some point in this second quarter of that Alabama game, Emory Jones woke up and he's playing really good football. So I think, I like Florida in this situation here.
Texas A&M coming off a disappointing loss, and a loss where if Spiller doesn't break a run, it's an embarrassing loss. And frankly, if C.J. Jefferson doesn't miss most of the second half, who knows what that game could have been. I mean, they were getting their tails kicked at halftime. Frankly, if Pittman doesn't maybe get a little greedy at the end of the first half, instead of it being 17-3, it's 20-0. So A&M's coming off that game. Their quarterback play is abysmal. Their offensive line play is every bit as bad. And then Mississippi State's running the air dump off. What do you expect in this game in College Station?
Well, I mean Mississippi State continues. So they basically doubled up Memphis in total offense, and you couldn't punch it into the red zone. And then, you had the horrible blown call by the SEC that allows the punt return, all those things, right? Everybody knows those. And then they go to LSU. They play LSU, Mississippi State does, and outgain them. But they can't punch it into the red zone. So State just continues to outgain teams. At some point, I guess Leach will figure the red zone out. And if he does, this Texas A&M team struggles up front. They don't block very well. And Zach Arnett's defense is much improved this year. I like the way Zach Arnett's defense is playing for Mississippi State. So, I mean, as long as they're this hamstrung with quarterback and Calzada can't get the protection he needs, and I'm not sure Calzada's that great a quarterback, they don't run the ball particularly well. You mentioned you take the home run ball away from Spiller. They rushed for like 60 yards in that game.
Yeah.
I think Mississippi State is going to be just like every other Mississippi State game we've seen this year. They're going to be right in this game, I think, with a chance to win. That's a terrible loss for A&M because their fans had already thought they would go into this Bama game next week undefeated. And it's going to be for a place, maybe at the top of the polls. And now you're going to have a loss. If they got 2 losses coming into that game, that's really, really bad for Mr. $9 million Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, the eye test, they don't really pass it. All right, we'll finish here. I know you got to go. Give me your thought. Give me your prediction on Ole Miss, Alabama. How do you ultimately see it playing out?
I think it's like a 48-41 type game. I think this will be a game that will be played by both teams in the 40s. I thought coming into the season, Alabama's defense was going to be so much better. This was a circle game. They were going to, get some revenge for getting embarrassed on the road last year in Oxford. But having watched Alabama's defense, I don't know that they've got that gene in them right now. So I still think Ole Miss will have success moving the football. I think Alabama's offense is good, and they don't turn the ball over a lot. And I think there'll be yardage there for Alabama. So I think, Alabama by a touchdown, a game played in the 40s, something like, 48-41, something like that.
Ryan, as always, it's great to spend some time with you. Hope you have a great weekend and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Neal. You too. Enjoy the games.
That was Ryan Brown. Always fun to visit with him. Appreciate him spending some time with us, giving us the Alabama perspective. Jeffrey Wright, 92.9 FM ESPN in Memphis. You'll hear him on the postgame show right away after Ole Miss and Alabama. Jeffrey's picking Ole Miss to win. I asked him why. We talked about that. Went around the SEC with Jeffrey as well. As always, I think you guys will enjoy about 40 minutes or so with Jeffrey Wright, 92.9 ESPN. Jeffrey Wright, 92.9 ESPN in Memphis. He's the executive producer, executive director, executive host of his show, producer with Calkins. He hosts a show with Mark Giannotto, but it's really the Jeffrey Wright show. So welcome into the show. How are you?
Listen, I just got to spend the better part of 45 minutes of my day discussing a scrimmage for Tiger basketball. So that's where I am.
I just literally, before I hit the button, I put the video of Kermit Davis's media day up, and I said, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have not had time. I'll put this in context at some point in the next few days. I'm about to talk to Jeffrey. I'm about to talk to Pete. I've got stuff to produce. If you're hung up on basketball today, September the 29th, 3 days as we tape this before Ole Miss, Alabama, and all the other stuff, I can't help you. And I don't know what to tell you.
I think the good news for you is you're not going to get considerable pushback.
Probably,
you know what I mean?
Probably none.
Especially this week. I think we made a mistake personally. But it's justifiable from the sense of, I'll tell you what, Neal, they could be really, really good.
Yeah, Memphis basketball could be really, really good.
Really, really good. And they just lost to UTSA. So it was a perfect confluence of events. It was the classic, all right, well, we tried to pretend that we cared about this football team, but their coach is boring. They made a bad hire. So let's move on.
All right. So speaking of really, really good, do we wake up on Sunday morning saying, oh, wow, Ole Miss football is in the catbird seat in the SEC West, in the national title conversation, is really, really good?
I think so, but then I also have another question, a follow-up to your follow-up. What are we saying the next Sunday?
Yeah, you know what? I'm in the mode right now where I'll cross that bridge.
Yeah.
This feels like, to me, this is the big. It's funny because I did Ryan Brown's show with Jim Dunaway and Lance Taylor and Rockstar, whatever his name is, great dude, by the way. And Ryan Brown was like, "Is this the biggest game in Lane Kiffin's career?" And initially I was like, "No," and I don't think it is, unless they win. And if they win, every game turns into monstrous. Because look, if they win, they get this one game cushion in the SEC West to get to the championship. Unless you're hung up on the, even then, I mean, they'd have margin for error to get to the playoff.
I mean, I guess it depends on how you find the biggest game. I find it hard to believe there's going to be many games that were bigger than playing at Tempe when it was literally win and keep your job at USC, or lose and get left on the tarmac or left on the bus. And so, if you want to talk about a big game, I mean, that's the biggest stakes you can have, right?
Yeah, but had he won that game, it was the same thing the next week. I mean, it was a stay.
Sure.
It was a stay of execution. This is a. They're right there.
I mean, this if he wins this game, all of the attention that Hugh Freeze generated himself that was never actually true. And if I lost so much respect for our first, there are some people in our profession that I actually think are quality, and I lost so much respect for them for just parading that narrative. And if you made one phone call, everyone was like, he is not a candidate for this job. I don't know how else to say it. I am not spinning this to you. I am not protecting this to you. He is not a candidate for this job.
Hugh Freeze loses to Syracuse and Jeffrey. It takes Jeffrey less than 5 minutes to get to Hugh Freeze in the.
Can we go over that? How about that? What a performance!
I know.
That was a new one, Hugh. Big brain. Save that timeout so you can ice the kicker.
Yeah.
Not to save the time or, tie game, not take the lead when a team had literally had 8 yards of offense. That was big brain. That's why, hey, buddy, That's why they're paying you the big bucks up in Lynchburg, Virginia. But I do think at that point, doesn't Kiffin become if he wins on Saturday, he becomes the name for every possibility, right? With the exception of, I think, USC, because I don't think I just again
I don't see it. I'm not going there. That is unrealistic to me. And I'm if Lane Kiffin returns to USC in December, well then Godspeed to everyone involved. It makes no sense on frankly any level, because it makes no sense.
I tend to agree with you, but I'm now just in this weird reality with college sports where I'm literally going, I'm never saying never.
No, I mean, and look, let's go back to the basics. If Ole Miss wins Saturday, Lane Kiffin wakes up on Sunday, the leading candidate for National Coach of the Year. I'm assuming that Georgia beats Arkansas. Otherwise, it's a co-leading candidate.
I hate to say it. If Georgia beats Arkansas, or if Arkansas beats Georgia, I don't think it's co-leading candidate. I think the candidate
it's Pittman. Yeah, sure. But for the sake of it, let's just
sure.
The world's his oyster at that moment. And frankly, if you're Keith Carter and Ole Miss wins on Saturday night, you walk in on Monday morning with this wheelbarrow full of cash that goes, what's it going to take? Just tell me, don't lie to me. Tell me what you want, and I'll figure it out. Give me 48 hours. I mean, it's something along those lines. It's that big of a deal. So to answer Ryan's question was, I think more than I think about it was, well, if they lose, is it the biggest game of his career? Probably not, because of where they were, just where this program was 22 months ago. If they win, yeah, it's the biggest win of his career. It's an absolute springboard into whatever comes the rest of the way. I mean, every game from then forward, with the exception of the Liberty game, becomes a chance to clinch the SEC, if you will. I mean, you're in the driver's seat. You protect, you control your own destiny, all that stuff. Because the next big step for the Ole Miss program is to get to Atlanta to play for the SEC title, to put yourself in a position where if you win that game, you're in the playoff. I mean, they've not gotten there yet. They've gotten close a time or two, but they've not gotten there yet. That's the next big step, and he would be in position to control his destiny to get to that step.
I think if they win on Saturday, he will put himself in position that, listen, you never talk about another man's job, Neal. We all know that. There will be feelers put out. Hey, if we make a move, are you interested?
Yes, for sure. And that's why in the event, and frankly, given the fit that he is right now, if I'm Keith Carter, I'm doing this anyway. I'm preemptively getting in touch with Jimmy Sexton, with Lane's people, and saying, what do we need to do? I'm getting ahead of it.
Okay, devil's advocate with you, because I do agree with you. I actually think he's an exceptional football coach, unlike others that have been branded as such. The Ole Miss job, in my opinion, has been proven. If you get someone that is highly motivated, and while this isn't Kiffin's first big gig, it was the gig that he needed, on the reclamation tour. It was the first time to get the big gig on the reclamation tour. What we've seen is typically you can put together a run, and a run that's pretty good. And then inevitably, every coach that has put together the run and ended up staying, it becomes a tough job, and they get a little complacent, and maybe they quit recruiting, and it just it ends up collapsing. You know better than I do, and I know they got a big commit today.
2 of them.
I have not sensed in my 18 months of observing, and I'm not in it every day anymore, and I openly admit that, I've not sensed a guy that is wildly in love with recruiting again.
I think it's picking up. I think he's starting to see that he can get it done. They have some momentum in recruiting. There's no question. Look, I know where you're going, and it's why let's just play it out. Let's say they win, and let's say they keep winning. You're right. What happens is coaches, ADs, boosters put feelers out hey, I know we have a coach, but if we didn't, hint, hint, what do you think? Would you be interested? And of course, the answer typically is, well, I never say never. And so,
What's it going to cost?
Yeah, what are we talking about here? This is where the changing landscape kicks in.
Yeah.
The Ole Miss job's never been more attractive because the SEC's never been more dominant than it is today. There is so much money. You see it happening. I do know there's some concern. And I had no idea we were going here when we started this. This is one of the reasons I kind of like doing the show. There is some concern, or has been, maybe it's dissipated, but there was some concern about what the reaction would be if he were unsuccessful in recruiting Arch Manning. And he's doing everything he can to get Arch Manning. I mean, he is recruiting him very hard, all the stuff that you can possibly do. But look, there's other schools.
The Instagram move was hilarious.
It was great. I mean, he's a social media genius. And I'm sure Arch got a kick out of it. And Arch is going to be at the game on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Arch is going to be at the game in Oxford in 3 weeks when Ole Miss plays LSU. And, who knows? Arch has a ton of Ole Miss ties. And
wait, really?
Yes. And who knows that maybe he feels something.
Oh, he's that Manning.
Yeah. Maybe he feels something on Saturday. Maybe a part of him cheers. Sure. Maybe a part of him in 3 weeks feels a different thing. Maybe on the flip side, maybe he goes, you know what? This is great. I love Ole Miss, but I kind of want to do my own thing. I don't want to be the next Manning. I want to be the first Arch. That's possible. I mean, and if that's
literally what Peyton did. That's what Peyton did. Now, granted, as you pointed out, there were other factors at play, sure, but in the end, that was the decision that Peyton made.
Yeah. So, and if that's the decision he makes, there's absolutely nothing that Lane Kiffin can do about it. So, I know there was a time when there was a worry about would there be consternation if he lost him. Now, look, if they win big and they don't get Arch Manning, Ole Miss people would not trade winning big for Arch Manning. They would rather have both, but if you can only have one, they'll take the winning big. But I know, I know your point, which is, but this is the beauty of Kiffin. And at the end of the day, I think he knows this about himself. He's built an offense around Derrick Henry. He's built an offense around Amani Toomer, and now he's built an offense around Matt Corral. He can build offenses around elite talent if he has it. It's a matter of, can you get that elite talent? I just think Saturday is such an opportunity for him, and I think he knows it. I sensed it. When he talks about Corral, there's been a couple of times that he's made comments, Jeffrey, where he says, hey, I hope our coaches, I hope our fans appreciate what kind of talent this is, because this doesn't come around every day.
And I agree. And in the end, I assume it's live now, right? Because this is Friday, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw what I put in picks.
Thursday or Friday. Yeah, so your picks are up. You've picked Ole Miss to win the game.
I've picked Ole Miss to win the game. And, I mean, basically what I said was, and I've said it for years, you don't get rich betting against Bama, but I have twice.
But there is a formula to beat Alabama, and Ole Miss has that formula.
Correct. And let's go over pros and cons. All right, let's start first with the pros. Tempo gives Alabama fits.
They hate it.
And even Saban on Monday night was saying as much. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the one thing that you can't really combat is tempo. I mean, in the end, his only solution is going to be lobster, lobster, lobster. And for those that don't know what that is, that's what you yell when you fake an injury. But if you keep doing that, I'll tell you what I think. Here's where I give you credit.
His ego doesn't like doing that. At the end of the day,
I know he doesn't, but at the end of the day, his ego. Okay, I agree with you.
Yeah.
He actually is a man of, I think he does want to, at least on the field.
Yes.
He does want to he wants to win the right way.
The right way.
Yes.
Yes.
And
he would be very bothered by video of one fake injury after another, after another, after another. That would eat him alive. I'm just telling you, it's not who he wants to be.
I agree. But I think also the desire to not let Lane Kiffin beat him might be stronger.
There's no question about that. It would be the angel and the devil on
correct.
each shoulder.
It's like, and it's the especially in his building.
Yeah.
In a building that he kicked him out of. So the pros are tempo gives them a lot of problems. Further, what gave them a lot of problems was when Emory Jones started running the football essentially every play, but Mullen was spreading it out sideline to sideline, if you will. There's really nowhere to you gotta commit one way or the other. You got to say we're either spreading all the way out or we're going to let you try to run it. And so then all of a sudden they're like, well, we're not going to give up the home run play. And essentially what it did was it left a linebacker one-on-one to stop the option. Well, what Ole Miss does is, for better or worse, Matt Corral is always an option of running the football. And
a very good option running the football.
There's no question.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a lot of easy reads for Matt. It would be harder reads for guys like you and me that even if we can read it right, the safety has to declare so early that if you got a cannon, there's nothing he can do. But if you throw the floater ball, that back end of the secondary is really good. And so I look at it this way, in that I also think Ole Miss is better this year than they were last year coming into this game. And I don't think Alabama is as good as they were last year coming into this game. It turns out,
agreed,
when you lose, what was it, 9 picks of the first 30.
Come on, look. They lost Mac Jones, who's a starting quarterback for the Patriots. They lost Devontae Smith, who's a starting wide receiver. They lost Jalen Waddle, who's a starting wide receiver. They lost Najee Harris, who's a starting running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They lost Landon Dickerson and another offensive lineman who are playing on Sundays now. I mean, come on. You don't lose that.
I literally think it was 8 of the first. I think it was 8 of the first 38.
You just don't lose that type of talent and year after year replace it. To Alabama's everlasting credit, really, it's quite frankly, it's the biggest accomplishment of the last 6-7 years of Saban's tenure, is that they've been able to replace that talent. But that eventually catches up with you. Look at Ohio State. Look at LSU. Look at the people who've lost this mass exodus to the NFL. When you do that over the course of time, it piles up. And at some point, it catches you.
Well, and even more so, it's piling up now faster than ever because the transfer rule and the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
And so now Alabama's more equipped to deal with it than anyone because they are still getting the best high school kids. And so they get to start with the best high school kids. But now it's a lot easier to close out the talent gap. And in the end, like, what I see is I know every Ole Miss person would prefer to have this game at home. Like, it's always a more special day when it's at your building. I think as awesome as 2015 was, I don't think there's an Ole Miss person that thinks that it was a better day than 2014. Like, it was just a special, special moment. I'm not saying it's better that it's at Tuscaloosa, but I do think there's an opportunity. And the opportunity that I think is, you have covered way more games than I have, but I've covered multiple there. When a game gets close and they don't think it should be close, and make no bones about it, they'll act like this game shouldn't be close. It's Ole Miss. That building gets tight.
Oh, big time.
I can't explain it. It's 100 and whatever, 2,000 people getting tight at the same time. And you sense it, like the players sense it. And I think Alabama's offense is talent-wise probably superior to Ole Miss's, but I do think it's way less experienced. And we saw it, man, in Gainesville. And I get it, it's different when you're on the road, but this team showed an ability to get that tight booty hole. And I just don't think Ole Miss is going to get the tight booty hole. Even last year when things would avalanche against them, I never sensed tightness from them.
No, what got him, bless his heart, was an offensive guard that moved to center and had some trouble with snaps.
Oh, but I'm talking about every game. I never even the
no.
Arkansas game. It wasn't
No.
tightness. It was unbridled enthusiasm.
Yeah, no, he tried to force some throws. But no, in the Alabama game, what ultimately got them, besides the fact that they simply couldn't stop them, was that, Ben Brown, who's not a center, he's a guard. Ben will play in the NFL at guard. He had a couple of bad snaps at the end.
And it was it's that weird reality where Ole Miss, I actually made this note, had the Tulane game actually been a game, I actually made the note. Ole Miss is at a disadvantage on wet nights because they run it so fast, they run plays so fast, they can't get a new ball in.
Yeah, they keep the same ball, and that ball's getting soaked.
Exactly, and so they just have to play with the same ball. Well, by all accounts, forecasts on Saturday look pretty good. So, I mean, to me, if you tell me Ole Miss doesn't win this game and my script was wrong, I think they can get into a shootout and Alabama can win.
Yeah.
But let's say I'm wrong in that Alabama covers and they don't cover fluky. They don't cover because on the last possession, Ole Miss throws a pick six to whatever. They control the game and they cover by 2 scores, 3 scores.
48-28. Give me the scenario for 48-28.
Correct. So if whatever that scenario is, I think what will have happened, we have not seen Matt pass the test of I'm going in front of 104,000. It's arguably the biggest job interview of his entire life because I think if he knocks this out, I don't really think we're going to have much of a discussion. I think I'm watching every quarterback. He's going to be the number one quarterback, and therefore, overwhelming odds say he's going to be the number one player taken. So
yeah,
it's that type of moment. I don't want this to seem like I'm talking about Alabama like they're just chopped liver. I'm not. I think the back end of their secondary. I think their secondary surprise yet again. It's very good. And I know they lost pros back there too. My concern is that I have not been overwhelmed by the speed of Ole Miss's receivers. So I think it's entirely possible that Alabama is able to tighten those windows, and he's going to have to make a lot of really difficult throws in the heat of the moment. And we've not, even last year, there's just not the atmospheres. It's so obvious how much crowds are mattering this year and whatnot. And even, I get it was a stupid offense, but I was not impressed with how Matt handled his first start at Memphis. I think that really set a bad tone.
Yeah. So long ago.
I know it's completely different, but I'm saying, I think we both know he is an intense competitor.
Yeah.
And sometimes those guys, we've seen them.
Sure.
They can get too amped.
And Ole Miss needs a hot start. You don't want to fall behind. You want to control tempo. You want Alabama to start thinking about point chasing. And I don't care what anybody says.
I'm 100% with you. If you're Ole Miss, you want this game to get drunk.
You want people to be like, man, I can't believe the state troopers aren't arresting these guys because everybody's drunk.
Correct.
That's the game you want, because you want Alabama to start chasing points, because you want at that point to go, okay, our quarterback hadn't done this, but your quarterback's really young.
Yep.
And pardon the pun, and make a mistake.
Yep.
Make a mistake. Hold the ball too long. Try to force something. And Ole Miss's defensive backfield is much better than it's been. And where a turnover is okay, well, now it's a 14-point game. All right, now you really got to chase points, because it's the one thing that's interesting about it to me strategically is I think both teams, Ole Miss included, are going to really want to establish a running game early. They're going to really want to put the ball in front of the chains, not get behind the chains. I mean, Ole Miss can thrive in 2nd and 3. I mean, Kiffin's gone for it on 4th down 14 times already in 3 freaking games.
I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but somebody had mentioned everyone keeps making the broadcast keep making a big deal out of the 3rd down conversion rate. I looked it up. I looked up every drive. They basically have 4 drives in which they kicked field goals. I think they missed one. And
it's the really
They had the fumble in the Tulane game, and then they had and then I believe they had a pick in the one of the backups quarterbacks came in. They had a pick.
Okay. I don't know.
In the whatever the
Austin
P game. They basically, and I think they had 4 punts. They've basically been stopped only 8 times. Like and I'm saying they get stopped in kicking a field goal. Like in truly, like, you know, like I mean, you look at it. I'm curious to see what first downs look like, because Alabama's been pretty gettable on first downs. Let me see if I still have it up.
Well, and if they're going to play soft and drop 8, you're going to run on them, because they don't have that elite defensive tackle that they've always had. They're good, but they don't have that guy that you can't run at. Florida ran right at them a lot.
They did, but they ran right at him after they had I think this is what gets left out. They did start winning the line of scrimmage, but they were able to run up the middle because they started running speed so hard to the edges. And so it ended up being.
But Ole Miss has those guys. They have 2 of those speed guys. They've got the weapons in the running game to give Alabama fits, especially when you include Corral as a runner.
Oh, no, I'm with you. I think Ole Miss has the only difference, I think, with Ole Miss and Florida's game plan is I do think I would trust Florida's 5 offensive linemen more than I'd trust Ole Miss's.
That's fair.
But oftentimes with Ole Miss's offensive line play, you're not trying to have like a massive success rate. What they're trying to do is scheme you into 5-yard carries. Yeah. All right, well, first down we got, as you said, it's first down we got 7. You know, I don't know if it was a quick pass, whatever. However you say it, they get 7. It's 2nd and 3. They formation you the wrong way, and they get a cheap 8 yards and whatnot. So that's how they want to run the football. I still think
sometimes even on the plays that sweep that they lose ground, and Pete's talked about this, where even on those plays, you're setting something up for later because you're getting their eyes going in a certain direction. Correct. And you're doing some other things back on the backside.
Correct. Ole Miss, so many people think when they watch them, it's like, oh, they're just trying to go as fast as they can. No, they're messing with your eyes a lot.
Yeah, they're getting you thinking.
Yes. And
when you go fast and you get guys thinking and they're already a little gassed, well, you don't think as clearly. You make a mistake, you make a bad read, you don't communicate, and boom, there's a hole and something happens.
Because he's still – there's no question there's a Baylor, whatever, Briles, and like there's a clear aspect of the offense that is that. There's still a lot of what Lane likes to do, which is, you know, get you moving one way, throw it back the other, a lot of crossing stuff, a lot of man-to-man concepts that he's going to get his best guy in space. He's going to make you declare on his fastest guy, play inside or outside, and then he's going to figure out based on which way you're declaring, he's going to get him free, and you're going to have to tackle him in space. And really, I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to. I think if you're Ole Miss, I hate to say it, I think if you win the toss, you take the ball. And I'm typically anti that. Typically the best way to get back-to-back possessions is to not. But I do think.
But that transitions me into what I was going to ask you about, which is we talk so much about Corral on the field. Corral doesn't play defense. A year ago, Ole Miss lost the game because they gave up 723 yards and they simply couldn't stop them. Are they better equipped this time around against that offense to get some stops? Can they hold Alabama to 500 yards of offense?
I think undoubtedly yes. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, I mean, Lane had to be pretty happy about the health of his defense coming in, right? For the most part, like
with the possible exception of Springer, and I hear different things, but everybody else is healthy.
Okay, but I think if you would have told Lane, I can get you to the Alabama game with one of your safeties maybe out, but other than that, you're good. I think
probably would have taken it for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then the biggest answer to that is I do think I'm not someone that goes, okay, well, you know, these guys that they have at receiver are not good. I think they're very good. But there's also the difference between being very good and being unguardable right now in the first round or, you know, in the NFL, like being first round guys that are unguardable. And I don't see a back that scares me. I mean, Robinson out of the backfield kind of scares me, but in terms of I don't like wake up and I, oh, Robinson, like I would,
Najee could win a game by himself.
Correct. So I don't have those kind of fears. And I mean, I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but part of me thinks this, whatever, everyone obsessing over the defensive alignment, the 3-2-6 or whatever. Does that equal 11? Yeah. It's 5 plus 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to make sure it equaled 11. The 3-2-6 and everybody obsessing over it. There's a large part of me that thinks that part of that was put in place because he thinks that's what they're going to need to beat Alabama. You're going to have to play you're going to have a lot of DBs on the field. And I think he knew there's not a power back this year. And I think he knew we can kind of afford to go a little smaller this year because they're not going to have a guy that's just going to run it down our throats for 8 yards a carry, Damian Harris and Najee to a certain extent, but like the Josh Jacobs. There's no Josh Jacobs that they can run it down our throats. And that's going to be our best way to hang with what they want to do, which is motion a bunch of guys one way, throw back the other, get vertical. And then
you don't think Alabama can scheme Ole Miss out of the 3 or power Ole Miss out of the 3-2-6?
Not to the level that they're going to be comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I mean, the other thing about scheming them out, that's the reason why I like to your point, like Sam, this kind of leads into the same thing. If I win the toss, I'm taking the ball. Because the faster I get a lead, the more quickly, it's human nature, man. Like even if
you want to chase points,
stick with it. And then on top of that, like, hey man, a lot of running backs that aren't used to getting a ton of carries, that's usually when fumbles start to happen.
Of course.
And everyone likes to do the whole, when you throw the ball, more bad things can happen. Well, when you're a team that throws the ball and then you start running the ball, a lot of bad things can happen, including fumbling, usually in your own territory.
Yeah, it's where I think there's a lot of pressure. Like we talked about, there's a lot of pressure on Matt Corral. There's a lot of pressure on Bryce Young in this game.
Oh, there's no question. It's
fun.
I mean, it's kind of at this point, like, it's so sad. God, what the sport has devolved into. But I mean, this is like declare your Heisman favorite.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, if Corral plays really well and wins this game, he'll have to F it up somewhere to lose the Heisman. There's nobody else out there to win it.
Is there any scenario where he plays meh and they win?
I don't think so. I think he's got to play a great game.
But I also don't think
he's such a big part of their offense with his feet that
exactly. I just don't think there's a situation where he's either going to play. Like I really believe this. Like he's either going to play. I think the way that they have built the offense, he's either going to play well, or he's going to play poorly, and it's going to look awful. Like I just don't. You know what I mean? Like because even if let's imagine like he turns it over twice in the first half. They can still come back and win if he's lighting it up in the second half, and then you're going to forget all about the first half. Absolutely.
Well, he's such a part of their RPO game, and he's such a part of all the things that they do. And like I said, it's his feet. Now, look, if you over focus on Corral as with Alabama's linebackers, Jerry and Ely ate them alive a year ago, and they were good at linebacker, and he could do it again. Parrish is a home run threat. Connor's a bruiser between the tackles. I'm of the opinion that Ole Miss's offense, if Corral plays well, you can't stop everything. You've got to decide, okay, here's what we're going to give them. This is what we're not going to give them. But you got to give them something. And if Corral and Levy and Kiffin see it and take it, well, it is what it is. And unless you adjust and go, okay, we're not going to give you that anymore. Now we're going to give you this. And that's where his ability to read and be mature and see new things, I think, is a potential difference maker Saturday.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be complicated. I think early on what they're going to give, it's going to be obvious. They're going to play a shell. I mean, you know what I mean? It's going to be
that hasn't worked so far this year against him at all. He's picked shells apart.
Correct. And now this is cranking it up a level on Madden, on NCAA. You know, you're going from playing All-American to now you're playing Heisman level, and the speed, they're longer, they're faster. The windows are going to be tighter. Maybe guys don't get off of jams as much. And so you've got to be like, one thing I will say, Matt has been afforded the luxury a couple of times this year where he could be a little late on throws.
Yeah.
And now, granted, Matt's late is not alarmingly late, but all of a sudden with longer defenders and, let's face it, I think it's pretty likely his offensive line is going to get beat more than they've been beaten this year. Does he get forced into the quick mistake early? And again, I'm taking Ole Miss straight up money line. Like I mean, this is how I think this game sets up so much like 2015. I mean, we covered that team, and I know they didn't play anybody early. I knew what I saw. I was like,
yeah, absolutely. That's it. It's you and I talk about this. We do the eye test.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss passes the eye test. Now Alabama does too, and that's why it's going to be fun.
They do, but Ole Miss passes the eye test in a way that I weirdly have more faith in.
Sure.
I have way more faith because I really just think the way that it is today, I can outscore you. I really believe that. I think that we've reached the day and age where you can truly just outscore somebody. And I think Alabama is more prone to make mistakes right now on offense than Ole Miss is. And again, timestamp it, Bama fans. I'm fine admitting that I'll be wrong, but I don't know. Like, this game just really plays out the same way to me. Like, I think they're going to be able to take it to them and force the issue. And I'm curious to see how, make no bones about it, a huge part of the Florida game for Alabama was them doing exactly what we're talking about. It was 21-3, and Florida had to deal with being shell-shocked. And then they got it going. Well, we saw in that game, they did get it going. And at a certain point, Alabama was like, screw this. Like, we can't stop it.
Well, and if Bryce Young doesn't put together a great drive, I'm not sure they win.
Again, that's a huge part of it, but also a bigger part of it, I think, was, Dan made the dumbest call he's made all night. That 2-point call was one of the dumbest things he's like. He can sit there and go, well, we made the wrong read. That shouldn't have even been an option. The Wake Forest zone read should not have been an option. When you are running it down their throat like they were, that should not have been an option. But, if that game gets 31-31, I know who I was betting on.
Oh, no question. All right. Speaking of eye test, get your thoughts real quick on a handful of games.
All right.
We'll just do these in chronological order as they're going to be played. Arkansas at Georgia.
God, Arkansas has been consistently undervalued. 18.5 felt insulting. It also felt like, what do they know? And they're so banged up.
And then now the word's out that JT Daniels is banged up.
I think that's low scoring game. Give me the points, but I still think Georgia's got enough to get it done. And while Daniels is banged up, they're getting a little more healthier with weapons. Yeah.
From an eye test standpoint, does Georgia look super elite to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Arkansas
looks 9-3-ish.
Very much.
Yeah.
And I think now with Arkansas, I'm closer to saying, like, if you say they're either going 7-5 or 10-2, those are the two options. I think I'd pick 10-2. I don't think this team's going to lose 5 games.
Yeah. Kendall Briles, his stock skyrocketing.
He's lucky that his dad fell on that sword, which he also should have fallen on, but still.
He's doing this with a really limited quarterback. It's really the job he did with KJ Jefferson in the first half before he got hurt last week was remarkable.
What's the status of Burks?
I don't know. If I'm them, I don't play him. If I'm Arkansas, I know I'm not winning the West. I sacrifice Saturday.
Are you laying the points then?
Yeah, I'm laying points. I think Georgia's going to win big.
Okay. I mean, again, I'm now at the point. Pittman's 11-3. I'm done against the spread.
No, he's very good. Yeah, his teams are always prepared. I mean, his teams always play. It's
for the record, this was one of the games last year that, I mean, I think it depended on when you got the number, but Georgia didn't score in the first half, and they put Stetson Bennett in, and they did. Like, they covered.
It was 10-5 Arkansas in the third quarter. All right, Florida -8.5 at Kentucky.
I don't know if I've told you this. I'm off Kentucky.
I am too.
Okay, so
I got off the train this week.
I don't know how we could watch Saturday night.
Yeah.
South sucks.
It's the eye test thing, right? So Carson and I were in Jackson, and we got back to the hotel, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to go get some dinner?" And he's like, "Man, I'm tired." And I was like, "Okay, I'll get you something. I'll go wash your clothes." And we were at an Embassy Suites, and so he's in one room, and I'm in the living room area. And I turned that game on, and I'm watching it. And I'm like, Kentucky's gonna win, but. And on the other channel was Florida, Tennessee, and I was flipping, and I'm like, Florida looks good. They look good. It's an eye test thing, and I think Florida covers.
I agree with you on that. Also, Dan ran it up.
I laid the points. I knew that he would.
Well, I'm still pissed about that. If Callaway catches that fourth down throw, that's the thing. That's also kind of what we lose sight of. Like, yes, don't get me wrong. Like, gambling is the ultimate thrill ride, especially in college football. That game was a drop away from a game that everyone's talking about. You know, Florida dominated in the second half. You know, they had some busts early. If Callaway catches that fourth down, that was a touchdown. There was no one in front of him. They had schemed it up perfectly. All of a sudden, that's another tight booty hole game. And all of a sudden, you're putting the ball in Emory Jones's hand again. That's what got left out of the first half, in my opinion. Tennessee started to score a little bit, and now all of a sudden, you got to have Emory Jones throwing in some uncomfortable spots, and he wasn't able to do it all night. But the biggest thing with Kentucky is my brother and I were very different quarterbacks, one in which he was talented, but the other – I always knew what to do with the ball. Like, I could look at a defense and I knew what I was supposed to do. My brother was the guy that would basically get up to the line, and even though maybe the play had 5 reads, he knew where he was going with the ball early. Will Levis has officially hit that point where when he fakes that zone stretch, he is throwing that crosser, and by God, there's never been a linebacker that's ever been underneath it. And, like, that's just what it's going to be. He's blowing one way, and he's throwing it back, and it's like, dude, like,
the Gators will take advantage of that.
I think so.
Mississippi State at Texas A&M. Long week in College Station, I'm guessing. The Bulldogs getting 9.5.
Okay, how much of the state game, LSU game, did you get to see?
At this point, a good bit.
Okay. Sorry, Ole Miss people. State was better down to down. They moved the football down to down better. Now, where LSU deserves credit is they got 2 big turnovers that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And then when they got their chance to hit the explosive play, they didn't miss. And
State doesn't have explosive plays.
State doesn't have explosive plays, but now let's go to the other side of the equation. What makes you think that Texas A&M can hit explosives? Because Matt Calzada, I have found a new, the patented Jalen Hurts, first read, bail right, flip it out of bounds. I found a new take on what Hurts really established early. Calzada gets the snap, doesn't even look for the first read, bails right, runs up to close to the line of scrimmage, and then starts backing up because it's like he realized, like, oh, shit, I'm at the line. Like, and then he throws off his back foot. It's unbelievable. He is off. How did he get a scholarship? There's no way that guy was good in college or in high school.
Yeah, Barry Odom set so many traps for him that he fell right into. It was
the best part is like, hey, man, the safety's running at you every time you bail. So maybe stay in the pocket.
Yeah, because the moment they flushed him, it was over.
I got to be honest, man. That might have been I've watched a lot of Jimbo football. That was the worst called game I can ever remember from him.
They got L's coming, man. A&M's got L's coming. Alabama.
Everyone does the whole Jimbo intricate offense, not exposed. Here was what stunned me on Saturday. I've never seen him bail on the run like that. He's usually the guy that will sometimes
big time back.
But Spiller, we saw Spiller. He was their best chance.
I know, he was their only chance, and they bailed on him.
I don't know.
But it's the same thing. So it's what you just got through talking about. Once they got 2 scores down,
yep, they panicked.
Like at one point, the Hornsby kid almost made a screw up, and Pittman was like, "Oh, God, for the love of God, kick!"
He literally said, "Is your ankle attached, KJ?" And KJ said,
"Get back in." Yeah, but once Arkansas kicked the field goal and got up 20-10, A&M immediately said, "Screw it. Okay, we have to throw every down." And it's like, okay, and you could almost see Arkansas going, "Oh my God,
thank you.
They took the bait." Anyway, all right, last game. Auburn at LSU. In the event that Ole Miss wins.
Neal, I know you want to do it. I know you want to ignore 22 years of history.
I do, because it means nothing to me. In the event that Ole Miss wins, this is the game that I will drunkenly be still doing a show at 11:30 where I'm telling people, hey, the longer you want me to stay, the more you're going to have to super chat. And it will be watching this. It'll be Auburn at LSU. And I, honest to God, Jeffrey, have no idea what to expect. I just think it's going to be a weird game.
Points. I want them.
Well, I took Auburn. I took Auburn to win straight up, but I want the points because I don't.
22 years of history. There's nothing I'd rather do than ignore that more.
Well, and I don't think the history matters. I just don't think LSU's very good.
I also think,
and I don't think Auburn's very good.
I do, but I think Auburn can run the football. I do. Yeah. I know, like, if you watch, like, last week, throw last week away. Like, that's the classic hangover.
Yeah, come on. It was abs. Thank you. They'd come off an emotional game in front of an emotional game. They took Georgia State lightly, and it almost burned them. It should have burned them. The officials bailed them out. They should have paid for it. But in the whole scheme of things, it really doesn't matter.
No, and I also think Harsin might be dumb enough to be the guy that doesn't understand what it means to bench Patrick Nix's kid, and I think that might be awesome. I think I'm in on Auburn right now, not from the sense of I believe in them. I'm in on them because Harsin was such an outsider. It's kind of Moorhead. It's Moorhead. Like,
but he's not as good as Moorhead.
No, but
he's not. Auburn's got Days of Our Lives written all over them.
Right. He's not as good as Moorhead, but also like Moorhead, you know what I mean? Like neither is ready for this environment.
Of course.
So why I'm in on Auburn it has nothing to do with football. I'm in on it because like that has train wreck written all over.
I know. Well, if you don't live down here and especially in that state, and you don't kind of get it.
Yep.
It's culture shock.
Especially with that school. It's not even that state. It's that state or that school in that state.
Yes, in that state with Alabama doing what Alabama's doing and Georgia over there, number 2. And yeah, it's like I said, it's Days of Our Lives, As the World Turns, The Guiding Light, Young and the Restless, all potentially wrapped into one because Auburn's deal could fall apart. I mean, these are the 2 schools, though. Think about it. These are the 2 schools when it collapses, that it collapses spectacularly. Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
It sets on fire. The loser Sunday wakes up with, oh, my God, are those flames? Yeah, for sure. Hey, man, thanks as always. I appreciate you doing this every week. It'll be fascinated to see what happens. I know that the people listening hope that you are right. And in the event that you are, it will be a really fascinating conversation on Saturday night. What time is your show on Saturday?
I will be available at 6:52. Considering it's the CBS game, there's a decent chance we could end up about the same time.
That is certainly possible. All right, my man. I appreciate you.
All right, man.
That was Jeffrey Wright. Always fun to talk to him. No one deserves more credit for where we've gotten with MPW Digital than Jeffrey. Without Jeffrey, I don't know that all of this ever happens. So appreciate everyone being in the thread with us. Thanks for Jeffrey. We're going to talk to Ben Mintz now. Going to talk to Ben of Barstool Sports about more about Ole Miss, Alabama. Ben's got a big Saturday plan. You'll be able to watch along the game with him and the people at Barstool. So we talked to him about that, some of the college games, some of the NFL Sunday schedule as well. From a betting perspective, here's Ben Mintz with Barstool Sports. Enjoy. Ben Mintz, Barstool Sports, kind enough to make his weekly appearance on the MPW Digital Pregame Show, brought to you by Walk-On Sports Bistreaux. It's open in Ridgeland, by the way. Don't forget, it's fantastic. I was in there on Saturday. Man, it's an awesome place. It's great. They had all the games on. I was in there at the same time as LSU, Mississippi State. They had the game on. It had to be 40 TVs, and they had Notre Dame. Wisconsin was on some TVs. They had the Vanderbilt, Georgia execution on a handful of the TVs. There was a lot there. The food was fantastic. Service was great, and they were just getting started. The one's coming in Oxford mid-November. But if you're in the Jackson area on Saturday, you're looking for a place to go watch. Maybe it's the early game, Arkansas, Georgia, or you're looking for a place to watch the Ole Miss game, or a place to either drown your sorrows or celebrate them after Ole Miss. You want to watch some of Auburn and LSU, I would highly recommend walk-ons there on 720 Highland Colony Parkway there in Ridgeland. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm actually good friends with Brandon Landry, the founder of Walk-Ons too. And what I'd like to add is just how much better their food is than Hooters and Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh, it's not close.
Like if you're doing the sports bar thing, Walk-Ons is like, I mean, you're getting really restaurant quality, good meals. And I just think that, that's one of the best things about it.
Yeah, Carson got the Cajun Diaz, like quesadillas with Cajun stuff, and some red beans and rice. I just got the etouffee, and it was great. It was really good. And yeah, they got great burgers and po' boys and the whole deal. And yeah, I mean, not to slam on the chains, but it's a totally different deal.
And they also, another thing too with Walk-Ons I want to mention, they gave $100,000 to the Barstool Fund up here. And, they kind of were founded off that principles of starting as little man. And I know they're, real corporate now and getting big, but they stay to their core values. And so I'm a big fan.
All right, so here we go. It's Bama Respect Week here in Oxford. We've been doing it all week. Bama Respect Week. We always give respect to Alabama, but the game is getting closer. By the time people see this, the game will be 48 hours or less away. Ole Miss about a 14.5 underdog at Alabama. What do you think? I'm going to guess you like that number, that you like Ole Miss to cover. What do you think about money lines and that kind of thing?
Man, it's one of those things where the game comes closer and closer. I get more and more excited, just like everybody, because you've seen it through the years. I mean, 2014 and 15, Ole Miss wins. In 2015, 16, and 20, Ole Miss has scored over 40 points 3 times in 6 years against Alabama. And then you look at last year. I mean, over 640 yards, 48 points. You still got Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral back, and that performance last year gives the team confidence. They know they can compete. They know they can score. They're not going to be intimidated by the Alabama Hellbent or Nick Saban. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, we all know how much this Ole Miss defense has improved. I know it's been against Louisville and Tulane, but I mean, this is a different unit completely. I mean, you can just see it in the assignments. People aren't blowing coverages. Chance Campbell is such a game changer in the middle. Secondary's playing well. Sam Williams getting a good pass rush. So, and then Bama has 3 returning starters on offense. I mean, I know Bryce Young looks good. He's one of the Heisman front runners. They still have a great O-line, but that is not the 2020 offense. Not even close to what they had out there. And so my thoughts is Ole Miss should be able to score, and our defense is a lot better and their offense is worse. So I think we've got a chance.
So from a betting standpoint, is the play the -14 and take the +14?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get the 14.5. It's going to be it's the highest over/under in the history of the Southeastern Conference, 79.5. I mean, ever in the SEC games, there's never been a high over/under, which is wild. That's a wild stat. But last year, 111 points scored. I can certainly understand why. I don't have a thought on the over/under. I mean, I like the 14, and the money line's 4-1. I'm talking myself into it a little bit. I wouldn't bet a whole lot on it, but I wouldn't be shocked. I think Ole Miss has a real chance here, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Rebel fan. I mean, I think anybody that's watched football, if you watched Ole Miss play the last 3 or 4 weeks, knows this is a serious football team.
I see that number, and I always do this, and you can talk yourself into Vegas trying to sucker you into either side of the line. But I see that number, and I can't help but wonder if Vegas is trying to sucker you into taking the under because they think the over is going to hit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, last year, just the fact that the 111 and nobody wants to bet unders in Lane Kiffin games, they just can't make it high enough. I mean, like I said, I mean, 79.5 is high. I don't have an opinion literally either way on it. I think it's about right. I do think Ole Miss's defense can get a couple stops, though. I don't think this Alabama, I mean, I watched that, they jumped Florida 21-3, but I mean, Florida took it to them the rest of that football game. And in the trenches, they did a little bit, which is what surprised me. I think Ole Miss's O-line's pretty good. So I think the O-line can hold up. Ole Miss ran for 274 yards in the game last year. It wasn't, when you look at the Freeze Ole Miss Bama games, Ole Miss couldn't run the ball. I mean, it was literally just a passing game. But now you're able to run the ball too. So I don't know. I got hopes for the Rebs here, and I'm not just saying it because I'm a Rebel fan. I think they match up well.
No, I'm with you. It's funny, and I won't name names. I don't even want to hint at names, but I've talked to some college coaches, and I know you know a lot of football people too. And there's a buzz in the coaching fraternity that this is an upset Saturday. That this is Ole Miss beating Alabama. That this is not a typical Nick Saban team, that this team has some weaknesses, which it stands to reason, right? You lose that many players to the pros and you don't just plug right in. Not always. And so it's caught up with them. The way it's caught up with Clemson this year, the way it's caught up with LSU the last 2 years. It's, you look around, it's caught up with Ohio State a little bit. I mean, you lose guys in mass to the NFL and you catch yourself paying for it. I had a mailbag question, Ben. It was interesting. It was like, hey, how many guys off this Ole Miss team get drafted this year? And so I started going just through the two deep, if you will. And I came up with about 8. And I was like, whoa, and then I started thinking to myself, well, typically a team that produces 8 draft picks wins 10, 11 games. And so that's where Ole Miss is. And so I can't make myself get as far as you're getting with it, but I'm close. I'm
not coming out like I said. I've held it back. Like I said, I think Ole Miss can compete and has a chance to win. I'm not going on anywhere saying like Ole Miss is going to beat Alabama. I think they have a shot, and it could definitely happen. But I'm not coming out like hot taking it either.
All right, interesting game because from a line standpoint, I want to get your thoughts on this line. Arkansas is an 18.5 point dog at Georgia. It's an 11 a.m. game on ESPN. Stories out today that JT Daniels is limited. He's got an oblique issue that has turned into a lat issue. And anybody who's ever had strains on that parts of their body knows that is painful and can become cumbersome. And it could impact his throwing. He didn't play a lot against Nashville and against Vanderbilt, and it turns out that was why. What do you think of this line?
Man, Vegas loves Georgia when they come out with a line like that. I mean, 18.5, and the over-under is only 48. So, I mean, you're literally just saying if you're Vegas, they're going to win 31-7. That's what they're saying. I can't lay 18.5, especially with JT Daniels being banged up. I just think that's too many points. I mean, if I had to make a pick, it'd be Arkansas, but I'm probably staying away from this one. I'd say if I had to make a play, it would be Arkansas on the points, especially with JT Daniels banged up. But I don't know. The line's so weird to me. Like when Vegas comes out with such a definitive line on Georgia here, I mean, I would have thought it was going to be like 14 or 15. It comes out 18.5, 19. That shows you how strongly Vegas feels about Georgia because they know people are going to take Arkansas on that line.
You think Georgia's the best team in the country right now?
I think, well, if JT Daniels is healthy, I think you could make that argument. Yeah, I mean, Bama looked – we'll find out more Saturday, but I saw some flaws in that Florida game, and Georgia's defense is just – I mean, all 3 levels. Jordan Davis up front, the pass rush, coming off – I mean, the pass rush is just phenomenal, and they got great DBs. They suffocate you on D. And when they have Daniels healthy, yeah, I think they are. I think that's fair.
Florida heads to Kentucky. It's a 8.5 point line. 5 o'clock game on ESPN. Man, I spent the summer – I'm mad at myself, man. I spent the summer going Kentucky. Kentucky's my big sleeper team. And I was like looking at their W's and L's. I'm like, they're going to be 4-0 when Florida comes to town, and they're going to be all geeked up, and they're going to get them, and they're going to go on a run, and they're going to be maybe 5-1, 6-0 at the turn. And they just don't pass the eye test at all. They're 4-0, but it hasn't been the most impressive 4-0. And frankly, they struggled with South Carolina. Am I crazy to love Florida giving the 8.5 here?
See, I think you are, and I'll tell you why. I think these games, Kentucky, under Stoops, they just play close games against everybody. And they're one of those teams that just, they win ugly. They look crappy against Chattanooga. I know they pulled one out against South Carolina. But I think I like Kentucky in the points at home here. I mean, I just feel like you look at these games the last few years, they've all been close. And I think Kentucky just has a propensity to play close games. That's just, they're one of those teams. And I think 8 on the road here is too much. So I don't know if Kentucky pulls it off, but I think it's a close game. I'm going to take Kentucky to fight them.
Mississippi State was bad for 3 quarters. They made a furious run in the 4th. They ran out of gas, didn't quite get there against LSU. Good win for the Tigers. They go to play Texas A&M, who frankly got thumped in Arlington. I mean, they really did. I don't. The more I look at the numbers and kind of watch that game a little bit, the more you go, oh wow, that wasn't all that close. A&M got dominated. We thought A&M had this dominant defense, and it's good, but it's not dominant. So they go against the air raid or whatever it is.
I mean, we need to come off with another name for it. It's
not air raid. I don't know what the hell it is.
They never throw down the field.
No, it's dump off, yeah. And then you only rush 3, and you're like saying run at us, and then they'll run a couple of times, and they get 6 or 7. And you're like, okay, well they're going to settle in, and they're going to get them out of this, and they're going to run. And then he goes, nope, I'm going to keep doing this dump off thing, and it gets it. You know the rest. The line's 9.5. I have to think it's been a long week for the boys in College Station. Jimbo does not take losses like that well. I'm inclined to lay them. What do you think?
Man, I just can't lay 9.5 with A&M's offense right now. I mean, they just look hard. They just look atrocious on offense. And State, say what you will about them, I don't think their defense is horrible. I think their offense lacks firepower. And so I think I slightly lean State in the points here, but I also was way wrong. I mean, I thought State was going to beat LSU, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything. But I think I lean State in the points just because how bad A&M's offense looks. I think their defense can keep them in the game, and I think this is going to be like an ugly 23-16 type game. You know, I just think it's going to be real. And so 7 or 9.5 is a lot of points when the over-under is like 46. So, I mean, I don't love State, but I just can't lay that many points with A&M right now. I mean, then you look at their offense. I mean, the Colorado game. You know, they didn't even when Haynes King was in there week 1, he didn't look good. And then this backup you saw against Arkansas, I mean, they struggle to move the football, and State has a pretty good defense still, I think. So hang on.
Is that you or me?
That was me.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought that was me. Yeah, you know, Spiller breaks the 67-yard run. Otherwise, that's an embarrassing loss for them. The last SEC game, before I get your thoughts on a couple of national games, Auburn, 3.5-point dog at LSU. Help me.
I lean LSU here just because of how bad Auburn's quarterback situation is going on the road tonight in Death Valley. Because this is an 8 o'clock start, and LSU getting that win against Mississippi State is going to get the fan base excited enough for this to be super, super rowdy. You know, should be good weather in October. They're going to be super fired up. And whether it's Bo Nix starting on the road or TJ Finley could be starting, which is a crazy story because 11 months ago, he started at Auburn for LSU and they lost like 53-8. And now 11 months later, he could be running out the tunnel starting for the opposite team. That's crazy.
It's bizarre, isn't it? You know, his name came up at Ole Miss last year as possibly bringing him in, and maybe he could sit a year and behind Corral and learn a little bit, and he didn't want to do that, and so here he is in the league, and he's about to go against his former team, and yeah, it's bizarre, man. The league is bizarre this year. It feels sort of unpredictable outside of the top maybe 3 teams.
Well, LSU, it's interesting seeing LSU, Auburn, and A&M struggle because it opens it up for Ole Miss and Arkansas so much. You know, and you're right. It is wide open. I think I lean LSU, though, at home. I don't think LSU is a great football team, but they do look like they're playing a little better. And, Auburn, I just wasn't big on Brian Harsin at all when they hired him, and they should have lost to Georgia State last week. They got away with murder in that game. They got that block punt for a touchdown, and then TJ Finley threw that crazy touchdown on 4th and goal where he was running around. I don't know. I'm not much of a believer in them right now.
Cincinnati and Notre Dame. Notre Dame coming off a big emotional win over Wisconsin in Chicago. The Bearcats clearly sort of trying to position themselves if they were to run the table. If there's chaos everywhere else, they're trying to position themselves for an unlikely playoff spot. This is a a massive moment for them because this would be their signature win if something like that were to happen. What do you think of Cincy and Notre Dame?
I like Notre Dame a lot in this game, plus 2.5. I thought Cincy got away with one at Indiana. They should have lost that game. Michael Penix, that quarterback for Indiana, blew that game. Indiana dominated that first half and let them off the hook. Notre Dame, good win last week against Wisconsin. Had the 2 pick sixes, so the final score looked a little deceiving. And then when I look at this Notre Dame-Cincinnati game too, Marcus Freeman, Cincinnati's defensive coordinator last year, now at Notre Dame, I feel like he knows a lot about that Cincinnati bunch coaching against him, and I feel like that should help him in the game prep. And
are you worried about Notre Dame's quarterback situation at all?
It's banged up. Yeah, that's still up there. The backup looked pretty good, but they hadn't announced that yet. But I don't know. I lean Notre Dame here. I have to make a play.
Okay. Any other college games that stick out for you?
Yeah, so some home underdogs this week. I like Maryland a ton on Friday night to beat Iowa. I think Iowa is one of those teams that are really tough at Kinnick Stadium. It's a hard place to go, but, man, they can't score, and they get exposed on the road when you can't score. Maryland's got a really good passing game with Tua's little brother and Raheem Jarrett. They got a lot of speed at receiver. I think Maryland wins that game. Other upsets I'm looking for, this Texas-TCU is interesting because TCU's kind of struggled losing to SMU, but TCU always beats Texas, and now Texas is getting hyped up. After they blew Texas Tech out, I smell a rat here and think TCU really might pull this one off. Watching Oklahoma-Kansas State, I'm watching Kansas State's quarterback situation close because Skylar Thompson, the starter, has been out a few weeks. He's trying to come back. If he can come back and play, I think they might win that Oklahoma game. Oklahoma, beating West Virginia 16-13. Spencer Rattler is struggling. I couldn't lay 10.5 on the road. So I'm kind of looking at home underdogs. I'm looking at Ole Miss getting 14, and then Kentucky plus 8, Kansas State plus 10.5, Maryland plus 4.5, Notre Dame plus 2.5. I'm a big home underdog believer, and I think last year COVID hurt the home field so much that I didn't have my best gambling year last year, and I think I struggled to adjust to that. But you're seeing it a lot in these primetime night home games. These home dogs have been barking a lot so far this year, and I think it happens again this weekend.
Remind me to finish with that question. I'm going to circle back at the very end to Alabama, Ole Miss. But before we do that, so week, 4 in the NFL. It starts with Jacksonville, Cincinnati, but there's a great game on Sunday night, Tampa and New England from just a storyline standpoint. So much there. Vegas gets a shot at 4-0 on Monday night against the Chargers. I'm just kind of looking through the slate of games from a what's entertaining standpoint, but what sticks out from a betting standpoint in the NFL this week?
Man, well, there's a bunch of – I like Cincinnati Thursday night. I think they're going to just kill Jacksonville. Jacksonville's – man, this Meyer thing's not off to the best start, to say the least. Rematch of the 2019 title game, Lawrence and Burrow. I think that's kind of interesting in the NFL, maybe a little less fanfare on this matchup. Another great game, Arizona at the Rams this weekend is going to be something. They're both undefeated. Rams, I had the Rams against Tampa. I was all over that last week. I actually think Arizona is going to fight them. They're getting 4.5. I think that's going to be an awesome game. I like Minnesota plus 2 at home against Cleveland. I think Minnesota, they're 1-2, but I think they're good. They lost an OT to Cincinnati, and they should have beaten Arizona, and they missed a 37-yarder at the gun. They handled Seattle last week. I thought that was a strong win. And Minnesota's got a good home field advantage in that dome. Cleveland's more of an outdoor physical team. I think that's a big thing for Minnesota that game's at home. So I'm looking pretty strong with them. I can't lay 8.5 or 7.5 with New Orleans right now against the Giants. I know it's going to be emotional coming back from Ida, and I know the Saints are grinding it out and playing D. It's just when you have no explosiveness on offense, it's hard to lay a lot of points. When they're trying to win 20-10 every week. That Jameis Winston still hadn't thrown for 150 yards in 3 games. And so that's kind of something I'm looking at on that front.
We started with Ole Miss, Alabama. We'll end with Ole Miss, Alabama. You mentioned crowds and that kind of thing. It's the first time this staff as a group has gone on the road in what will be a full house, a hostile crowd. It's frankly the first time really Matt Corral's, with the exception of the end of the piss and miss game in 2019, one that he didn't play really until the fourth quarter. It's the most he's played on the road against a hostile crowd. Do you anticipate that being a factor at all?
I think he's going to be all right. I think he learned a lot from last year, those games. We all remember what happened at Arkansas in the first half turnovers against LSU, but I feel like his defense recognition, he's just really good at identifying stuff now, and I think he learned. So, I don't think the crowd's going to get to Corral here at all. I do think it's important Ole Miss gets off to a good start, though. I think Ole Miss goes down, gets up 7-0, 14-0, gets that energy, puts the home crowd on edge. That's important. I don't think you want to get down 14-0 or 10-0 in this game if you can help it.
Ben, what can people look for from you this weekend?
Oh, man. So I hadn't even mentioned it on here, Neal. I'm excited to share this with the Rebel fans, too. So got the stream Saturday at 3:30 for Ole Miss Bama with Dave, Big Cat, everybody. But I'm flying to Vegas, red eye, 6 a.m. Sunday morning. My return to the World Series of Poker.
Oh, my gosh. I forgot about that.
Really pumped. Yeah, it's weird that it's during football season because usually it's during the summer. And so a lot of it's going to get lost on the football weekends competing with football. But I can't wait to get back. The last time I played the WSOP, I got 327th in the World Series main and 18 for 40 grand. And I hadn't been in 3.5 years. And I'm going to play, I'm going to do 2 different trips. This first trip's playing some smaller buy-ins. Hadn't played a live tournament since before COVID. So you can't just go out there for the 10K and expect to do well. So I'm going to play some of the smaller events, like a 500, a 600, a 1,000 next week, and just see what happens. I'm going to be going really hard on my social media and the Kraken Aces Poker podcast, doing video logs and analyzing hands and just trying to really show what being in the World Series is like to stoolies and fans that don't know. I think it's something because, I'm no athlete, but so poker's the one thing I can compete in. And so I'm over the moon, excited about that. And then I'm going back for the main November 5th. And, I've gone really deep in it twice. I played it 5 times and I've done really well twice. So, still believe in myself and really looking forward to that.
Well, listen, good luck on Saturday with the live cast and good luck in Vegas. Look forward to talking to you about it this time next week.
Yeah, thank you again for having me on. I've been getting a great response to the segments on here, so I really appreciate all the Rebel fans supporting it.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you giving us time every week. Talk to you soon. Bye. That's Ben Mintz, Barstool Sports, always kind enough to give us 25 minutes or so of his time every week here for the MPW Digital Pregame Show. One final segment before we sign off for the day. A reminder, we'll be with you post-game. As soon as Ole Miss and Alabama hit zeros, maybe even before that, we'll be in with the MPW Digital post-game show presented by Walk-On Sports Bistreaux. We'll stay with you for a long time on Saturday night. Take your calls. We'll talk to Jeffrey Wright. We'll talk to Brian Rippey. Who knows what all will happen. Some of it obviously depends on the outcome, how the game goes, but we'll plan to be with you for a while. We'll turn on the evening games here in the Clark Ford Studios and spend a Saturday night with you and talk about what happened in Tuscaloosa. Before we do that, though, Chase Parham spent some time with the people at Visit Oxford. A little bit of a double-decker abbreviated tour here for you. This is brought to you by Visit Oxford. Give it a look.
A lot of days in the Oxford Exxon podcast, we tell you about the historic double-decker bus tours that going around Ole Miss and Oxford. And today we're going to show you a little bit of that. Visit Oxford Sales and Marketing Director Nadia Thornton is going to take over. We're going to show you some of the different sites. We're going to tell you about those sites and more. But if you'd like to take part in the double-decker bus tours, you know by now that they happen the Friday before home football games. They also happen on home baseball weekends and more. It's adult tickets, kid tickets for 12 and under, 1 hour tour around the Ole Miss campus, the historic downtown square in Oxford. Reserve seats for that. You call 662-232-2477 or go to visitoxfordms.com. You can see all the different events, everything going on around town. So here I'll hand it over to Nadia Thornton. You see a little bit of Oxford, see a little bit of Ole Miss, and get a taste of what the double-decker bus tours are like here on football and baseball weekends.
So Oxford was founded in 1836, and it was given the name Oxford in hopes of getting the first state university. And Thomas Dudley was a 19-year-old man who came up with the idea to name it after Oxford University in England in hopes that we would get that university. The Grove, of course, is 10 acres. It's protected by law to never become a parking lot. It used to be tailgating when people would drive their cars into the Grove, but that was stopped in the early 90s. And now, of course, it's transformed into a sea of party tents. It's certainly been called the Holy Grail of tailgating, and ESPN recently named Oxford the best college town. To get a full double-decker tour by a local historian, those happen Fridays before home football games, and in the spring, the Fridays before SEC home baseball games. Ventress Hall was the first university library on campus. It was built in 1889, and there is a Tiffany & Company stained glass window that was given by the Delta Gamma sorority, which purchased it for $500. The Lyceum was the first building on campus. It was designed by William Nichols, and there is a bullet hole at the top left corner that has been preserved to remember the riots of 1962, which was when the first African American student, James Meredith, was enrolled in the university. Behind the Lyceum is a statue that is dedicated to Mr. Meredith. The Center for Manufacturing Excellence is the only program like it in the nation. It has engineering and business courses under the same roof. A lot of manufacturing companies might have managers who are engineers or business majors, but not both. So now with the CME, you can get a degree in both. So this area will one day be a new STEM building. It is going to be the largest single construction project in the Oxford campus history, with a project budget of $160 million. And it'll be one of the nation's best STEM buildings for science, technology, engineering, and math. The Ford Center for Performing Arts was completed in 2003 and is home to a variety of performing arts, including concerts and Broadway shows. And it housed the first presidential debate of 2008 between Senator John McCain and President Barack Obama. The University Museum was first endowed by the estate of Sisters Mary Bowie and Kate Skipwith, and was given by the City of Oxford to the university in 1971. The museum contains permanent Greek and Roman antiquities, as well as a lot of rotating exhibits. Also, there is a trail between the museum and Roanoke. It's about a mile long, called Bailey Woods, and you can travel that and kind of go back and forth between Roanoke and the museum. So this corner is called Four Corners. At one time, all four corners contained gas stations. There is one gas station left. It's Four Corners Chevron. Now we have a bank, a hotel, and Abner's Chicken Tenders on the other corners. Square Books is a nationally known independent bookstore. A fun fact, if you're a fan of HGTV's Hometown, Ole Miss alums Ben and Aaron Napier got engaged on the balcony of Square Books. And then Square Books Jr. is a offshoot of Square Books. It's the children's bookstore, and they have story time with Miss Jill on Saturday mornings. The Lafayette County Courthouse is kind of the anchor of the square. This building replaced the 1840 courthouse that was destroyed during the Civil War. It was built in 1871 and was named on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977. Nelson's is the oldest continuing department store in the South. First opened in 1839 in a log cabin. It had everything from groceries, hardware, drugs, everything that a pioneer family would need. The present building was built in 1897, and the exterior has remained unchanged since it was built. City Hall was built in 1887 and was Oxford's first permanent federal building and post office. It did not become City Hall until 1974. There's a life-size statue of William Faulkner, which was built by local sculptor William Beckwith, and was dedicated in 1997 on what would have been the 100th birthday of William Faulkner. You can also find his voter registration signature and one of his typewriters in the lobby of City Hall.
So again, we'll be back with you on Saturday night for the MPW Digital Postgame Show. Look forward to that. Thanks to everybody for being a part of the stream. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Again, our thanks to Pete DeWeese, Ryan Brown, Jeffrey Wright, Ben Mintz, and Visit Oxford for their time today. I'm Neal McCready. Thanks for spending some time with me. We'll see you again on Saturday night. Take care.